At 6 o'clock, I'd like to call to order the February 14th committee meeting of the Milton Area School District. Could we have roll call, please?
Mr. Frederick? Here. Mr. Hosterman?
Mr. Hosterman is unable to make it this evening.
Mr. Hunt? Here. Ms. Kessler?
Ms. Kessler is unable to make it this evening.
Mr. Moser? Here. Dr. Strasser?
Here.
Mr. Harris? Here. Dr. Weaver?
Dr. Weaver is unable to make it this evening,
And Mrs. Rance?
and I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay, would you all please stand and join the pledge of the flag? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So let's get right to it. Finance Committee, Mr. Frederick and Mr. Moser.
Thank you, Mrs. Rance. We've got quite a few different presentations this evening. We're going to start out with Mr. Fink with a budget update.
Okay, last time we were together, the board asked for me just to give an update on where we stand for the current year's budget. So for 22-23. So there's just a quick 2-page, 4-slide handout that you all should have. So I'm just going to jump into the second slide. What this slide shows is where we are versus our actual expenditures compared to our budgeted expenditures through this point in the year. And then to give you a good feeling for where that falls, I also gave you the previous 3 years and where we were at those specific times, because when it comes to expenditures for a school, depending on the time of year, we either see big jumps or we see kind of lulls. So I think the best way to compare where we stand this year would be to look at where we stood at equal times the previous years. So I'm going to just kind of jump right to number 7. So that'd be the 7th month of the fiscal year. So it's where we are now, and that is the yellow line shows our current actual expenditures compared to our budgeted expenditures. So as of right now, we're in good standing on the expenditure side. We're coming in below where we've been the last 3 years at this point in time comparatively, and we're well below the actual budgeted amount. But if you look forward, you can see that those expenditures catch up pretty quickly over time. But based on where we stand today, I do expect us to come in at or below our budget by the end of the year. Things are looking good there. Part of that reduced expenditure amount are the positions we still haven't been able to fill throughout the year. So it's something that we'll monitor as we move throughout the year to the end in June 30th. The next slide is the same thing, but for revenues. So again, kind of direct you to number 7. What you see is the revenues outpace the budgeted amount through those first few months. And that's because those are our big tax collection months. So you get into August, September, October. That's where we're bringing in the most of our revenues. And then that sort of levels off as you get throughout the year. And then we get to the final month, you see a big jump in revenues because that's when we actually post and book all of our state funding and kind of wrap everything up. But again, what we want to look at is where are we compared to previous years? And once again, we're actually outpacing the last 3 years. We've collected a higher percentage of revenues through this first 7 months this year than we have in the last 3 fiscal years. So again, another positive sign that we're going to have a good, strong, and smart fiscal year. So I'm excited for that. And again, we'll keep monitoring that through the last 5 months of the school year. Any questions on those 2 projections and just where we stand year to date? Okay. And then the last slide, this was another thing that came up from one of our meetings. And it just was wanting to touch on the revenue loss from commercial assessment appeals and exonerations. This is something I've shared, I think either last year or the year before, but I updated it. So bear with me as I read from the slide a bit. Annually, the district is impacted by lost revenue due to assessment appeals, local economic revitalization tax assistant or LRTA, and Keystone Opportunity Expansion Zone, KOEZ. These lead to short-term financial constraints on the district because we're just bringing in less money in the short term, less tax dollars, and it puts a heavier burden on the rest of the taxpayers, but ultimately the growth of our commercial properties benefit all of us. So kind of the best case scenario is these commercial properties get reduced taxes, they reinvest in their business, they stay local, they hire more people. That's the outcome we want to see. But part of that is a short-term financial constriction on the district because we're seeing less dollars come in the short term. So that's what we're touching on here. So I pulled 28 commercial properties in the district dating back over the past 10 years that have had reduced values for their assessed values. For those 28 properties, we've seen a decrease in assessed values totaling over 11 million, about 11.4 million just across those 28 large commercial properties. That results in an approximate tax revenue reduction of 582,000 this year. So, if you could go back in time and take the assessed values from 10 years ago and hold those steady, we would see 582,000 more in our tax revenue for the current fiscal year. Of those properties, 7 of them participate in our KOEZ, so that Keystone Opportunity Zone. They do not pay taxes right now. That's a 10-year program. We are in year 5, so we have 5 more years to go with that. At the end of the 5th year, that drops off, or at the end of the 10th year, that drops off, and then they will begin paying on their full assessed value. And the LERTA has 4 years left on it. That property has, the LERTA works where they got 100% reduction for the first 2 years. Then after that, it's 10%. They pay 10%, then 20%, then 30, then 40. And then the final 2 years, they pay 60% of their assessed value. And then at the end of that term, they pay the full assessed amount. So both of those are coming due within the next 5 years. So we will see an increase for those properties. I did the math today. That's roughly going to be, I'd say, at least $100,000 of added tax revenue when those 2 programs end. And that's based on today's tax rates. My assumption is we'll see increases over that time. So I'd say a minimum of $100,000 in increased revenue from those programs no longer being available. And then I just wanted to add, because this was something else that came up in one of the meetings, we do have veteran tax exonerations. These are for disabled homeowners or disabled veterans who are homeowners in our counties. We have 20 in Northumberland County, and that comes out to about $30,000 for the current fiscal year. At this time, Union County wasn't able to provide the information to me on time, but I know there's less in Union County just because it's just White Deer Township, we just less properties. But I just want to give you guys an example of how many veterans we have and the financial impact that we see there. That's all that I have for the current budget update. Do you have any questions or anything you'd like me to expand upon?
Is there anything in like the opportunity zone agreement or the LERTA that once that expires, they can't immediately appeal for a reduction or anything?
I don't think so. I shouldn't say yes or no 100% certainty, but I don't recall seeing that. If what I will do though is actually pull those agreements up and brought them with me while we're doing some of the other presentations. I will run through the contract and then maybe I can jump in and just give you that answer before we leave tonight.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that's 100% for the full 10 years.
Yes. Any other questions?
Cheryl could probably do this.
All right, that's all for me for right now. I think I have more coming up.
All right. Thank you, Derek.
Yep.
All right, we're going to transition over to technology and Mr. Gemberling.
Good evening, Board. I'll be pretty short this evening. Right off the bat, we have our budget comparison. Our big hitters are insurance. You're going to see a 62% increase this year in insurance, and that's cyber insurance. It's really getting out of hand with cyber insurance. Nothing we can do to prevent that. I mean, we're doing everything we can. We're going to be implementing some safety measures and stuff with log-ons, email, and some of that stuff to try to meet their minimum needs to get the best price we can there. And the other big hitter is the 650 software fees and supplies. We're being hit with a lot of software increases in price this year, so we have to absorb that in that line item. The next slide just kind of reiterates what I just said there. And then the next slide shows our help desk. We're down on the number of tickets for processing this year. It's mostly because we haven't been able to fill open positions. We're struggling to stay caught up with incoming tickets. But last year we had 4,255 tickets all year. The year before was 5031. The big increase was 2018-19 when we started going one-to-one, a device for every student. We saw a big hit there in tickets coming in. Increased up to 2021, and now it looks like it's on its way back down. Next slide. Looking forward, we're analyzing what devices we're using at what grade levels, looking at possibly going Chromebooks at high school, which will save us quite a bit of money there. And the money we save on the Chromebooks, we're actually going to reinvest in classroom technology, new projectors, new interactive equipment in the classrooms. So, any questions? Apologize, it was kind of short tonight, but it's been kind of hectic lately.
So the only comment I'll make to you, and Dwayne said that, is that Chromebook decision, we're really diving in to see what high school teachers think, what is the capability? As Dwayne said, the ability to reinvest is the critical piece. I don't think it's a reduction in that budget, but it's a way of how do we go in creatively? And Derek was the first one to say that, like, how do we repurpose the money to allow for upgrades, where we're not doing a thorough increase when you need to add new projectors, whether it's the whiteboards we need. But I'm excited about that. I want to make sure we're making the right decision for kids first. But if it can improve our instruction in the classroom, I think it's a great way of reinvesting to better suit the needs of everyone involved. So that'll be a thorough look as we come to the end of the budget season. We should have a good answer on that.
Are there any curricula that are very processor intensive, like drafting or computer design or whatever, that might require beefier devices?
So I'll let, if Dr. Kirkpatrick or Mr. Ranch, Mr. Burr, you want to comment from the high school level, but
We do still have one computer lab in the high school
Yeah.
that has computers suited for what's going on in there.
and I think that's the question we're working through, is like the totality of every kid having a device that is meaningful to them, that is cost effective to us, but also having the ability to do that when necessary. My experience, I saw K-12 Chromebooks and it worked. You had to get through the software issues and what software best suits different programs. I think it's very possible, but again, we're just making sure. We've done some budget discussions at White Deer and Baca over the past week. We just did White Deer's today. We meet with high school staff tomorrow. We're going to bring it up, one more time during that meeting. We had a few people show up for the first meeting, but I think that the answer to that would probably be yes in some way, but not maybe as extensive as every kid needing that level of a device
Certain. I was wondering more if there would be the option if their
if needed.
class load requires it, could
Correct.
they upgrade to something? So.
Any comments?
Nope, I think you hit, that's exactly right. The other lab will take media lab.
So we've had discussion with a lot of the teachers and it talked about some of those concerns with that exact thing, or the device is going to be able to handle what they potentially could be utilizing it for. And I know Mr. Decker has talked about, he was a Williamsport guy, and he said they use Chromebooks up at Williamsport K-12 and very little, if any, grumblings whatsoever, he said. So, but we had talked about doing a test pilot at some point here with our kids at the high school level, maybe like a class size. Hopefully we're going to be able to get that in quickly here to see if they can do that. But we had talked about doing that. Kind of gives us a little idea of maybe the things that we need to invest in a little bit more as if the device doesn't do what we need it to do.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Gamberly. All right, next on deck is Mr. Berge talking about cyber education.
Good evening, board. Before I get started into the presentation, I want to take an opportunity first to introduce someone who's been an integral part of our cyber program and also our online learning at Milton High School, as well as a huge contributor to our Canvas implementation process. 3 years ago, when I took over the cyber program, we were looking for an online facilitator, somebody to come in and monitor our in-house classes Like if a kid's taking maybe like a history class, but they're in the building, they're doing their normal schedule, but they couldn't fit that history course in, or a language that we didn't offer, something of that nature. We have a classroom per block where we have the kids can go and work on that. And we were looking for someone basically to monitor that room. And we were extremely fortunate to get somebody that is extremely overqualified for that position. But since she has come on board, we have recognized her value, and we are using her as much as we possibly can in a variety of different forms, as opposed to just strictly monitoring students as they're working on their devices. This is Dr. Kim Zalonis. Those of you that have been on the board for a few years, you have heard us talk about her. You've heard that name talked about before, and I asked her if she wouldn't mind coming out tonight so that you guys could put a face with her name, because she is a huge part of our cyber team. And also that Canvas implementation. She is a direct resource for our teachers to be able to improve their Canvas platform, which they utilize for their housing their courses, their in-house courses. A great resource for them, as well as for us in the cyber program. She has been an invaluable asset to us in the cyber program. And I'm not sure how we would make it, how I would make it if Dr. Zalonis wasn't a part of our team. So I just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to meet Dr. Zalonis. She's also going to kind of hang out with me as well. If I missed something on the presentation, she's going to chime in as well. And at the end, if we have questions, we'll afford you that opportunity. So as we go through the presentation tonight, we're going to look at two different things. We're going to look at what our current cyber program is doing, cost, expenditures, what we've seen in the past, enrollment numbers changing, fluctuations, and then we're going to talk about what we would like to do moving forward that not only will serve our students in a better educational platform and a better educational environment, but also could be a savings for us as the district. So without further ado, we'll get moving here. So the first slide here, we're just taking a look at basically from last school year to this year, our number of students that have been enrolled in our cyber programs. So if you look at 21-22, the bottom of the screen, you see the total number of students that were enrolled. We had 145 kids enrolled in our cyber program last year. Understanding, and this is just our in-house cyber, Milton Cyber Academy. This is not our outside vendors. This is just Milton Cyber Academy. That number it's ever changing. Kids that come and go out of the program throughout the school year as well. So please understand, when we talk about numbers, they're not exact because of that change that we continually see. I mean, just today alone, I think we enrolled 3 kids in our cyber program. We took a couple of kids out to change the marking, or they changed the semester because they weren't successful, or the parents wanted them back in the building. So there's not exact numbers with this until the year is over and we have paid and we have received all of our bills. That's when those numbers are accurate. So you see 21-22, those numbers are pretty much accurate, with the exception of the number of total students, because we may at one point have had 150 kids, 160 kids in a program. But that was the number of kids that were enrolled last year. And the breakdowns are just the kids that are in cyber charter schools is the green numbers. Those are the outside school districts, the outside cyber programs where our kids enroll in. And then the blue is secondary cyber, sorry, the light green is elementary cyber charters, light blue is secondary cyber charters. And then our Milton Cyber Academy, purple is our elementary students. And if you look at the pink, that is our students that are enrolled in our cyber program, which we believe affords our kids a much better opportunity. So this is another number that Mr. Fink could give us a lot more details about it. But basically, if a student enrolls in an outside cyber program, this is what it costs the district. A regular education student, it costs us $13,000, almost $14,000 for a regular education student that enrolls in an outside cyber program. If they are a special education student, meaning they have an IEP, that doubles, and we're looking at almost $30,000. And those numbers have increased significantly over the past couple of years. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Fink, that it is basically what it costs us to educate a student, the number that we give to the state. That's what the cyber charter programs are charging us. Keeping in mind that they're not using our facilities or having to deal with any of our maintenance staff or custodial staff, anything like that, to upkeep and maintain a building. They don't have those expenses. However, they're using that number. That's what they charge us as a school district. as the dollar amount. So the next one we look at here, you're looking at the year 21, 22 and 22, 23. These are the expenses that we've seen in 21 and 22, and then what we project to be for the 22, 23 school year. So that's where we're at. Sorry, that's where we're at right now, assuming that there's no changes. That's where we're currently at in the school year. Okay, so if you look at those numbers, and you'll see just a little bit higher costs this year as opposed to last year, but the numbers are a little less. The reason for that is because the increase in the cost of the outside cyber programs. So even though less students are going out to outside cyber programs, we are still quite a bit more, close to $30,000 more this year than we were last year, even though there are less kids going out. So now you're looking at the numbers from our cyber program. This is what it costs us to educate our students utilizing our program. And when I say our program, meaning we run it, our platform that we utilize, we work with the IU to provide us access to vendors at a significantly reduced rate. So even though it is our cyber program, we run it, we manage the students, we monitor their progress and their success and their attendance. All of that is tracked through us. But for the actual content and curriculum, we utilize primarily Edison for the secondary level, and we utilize Accelerate Ed primarily for the elementary level. There are a few singleton courses that go into other vendors, but for the most part, those are the vendors that we utilize. So we are still at the mercy of the content and curriculum that they are using. And at the elementary level, we primarily use all the contracted teacher of record for those courses at the elementary level and middle school level. And at the high school level, we try to bring in some of our teachers to be the teacher of record, but I'll get to that here in a second. So if you look at those numbers right here, the expenses that we have. So if you're looking at Milton Cyber Academy last year, it costs us for the average K-5 student, you're looking at $2,200 per student is what it cost us as a district to educate that child through our cyber program. 6 to 8, we had roughly 20 students there, average cost of $2,160 for our 6 to 8 students. And then at the high school level, we had 82 students last year, and that was just over $2,000 for us educating those students as well. And if you look at, sorry, that was 2 years ago, my bad. This past year, 21, 22, there are the numbers, the breakdown for the different subgroups as well. So it's a little bit cheaper for us this year, and I'll explain why we were able to bring that number down a little bit more so than previous years. So this is this current year, and this is the number that I think is probably the most important to us. And I know this, I can't remember how many years ago we started our cyber program, but it was a really huge benefit to our school district when we did this, when the program initially started. But at the end of the day, this is basically the same breakdown. The number of students we have, cost per student, how much it costs in the different grade levels. But I want you to look at K-5, 6 to 8, 9 to 12 special ed. If you look at those costs in our cyber program, you'll notice they're no different than a regular education student. And if you saw regular education student was $14,000 in a cyber charter school, almost $30,000 if they are a special education student. We're able to keep those numbers identical because we are utilizing our special education teachers. They are still our case managers. They are the ones that are providing that support that the kids have through their IEP. So that's a huge saving to us, and I believe a huge benefit, because I trust our employees significantly more than I do anybody else as far as servicing our students. So if you look at the bottom dollar where we're at this school year right now, if you were to take our kids out, put them on an outside cyber program, you'd be looking at 1.1 million is what it would cost the district. You're looking at $134,000 right now is what it's costing the district with where we're at right now. So a little bit of a savings, but also then if it gets you to think about what's happening outside of these walls and who's getting some money and what it's costing school districts, it's say a lot of stuff, but I'll refrain. So a little frustrating though, a little frustrating. So one of the things that we we've done in the past, but we tried to increase the number of opportunities that we had to utilize our in-house teachers as the teacher of record. So we still utilize, this is at the secondary level, we were still able to utilize, we're utilizing Edison's curriculum, but we were then able to work our schedule. Mr. Rance was able to move some pieces around that we were able to utilize some of our current teachers to basically grade assignments, provide feedback to our students. So they're the teacher of record. It's not their content, but they're monitoring that student, they're grading their materials, and they're providing feedback to the students. And that's at a little bit of a reduced cost for us, and it saves us a little bit. So if our district teacher provided the actual being the grading and the feedback piece, it costs us $40 per part, which is a significant savings as opposed to $140 per part. Average course is 4 parts. So you do the math, we typically do six parts or 6 courses throughout the school year. If we're saving that kind of money in each part, it's a decent savings. That's where you kind of saw that reduced cost, because we're able to work it, that we were able to use more teachers of record. Doesn't go without saying, though, that those teachers then are not teaching students that are in our building at that point, because we devoted a period for them to have students in front of them that are working on their cyber courses, but then that also afforded them an opportunity to be the teacher of record. So yes, it does save us and service us a lot from a cyber program, but it also takes a little bit away from what we're doing in the classroom as well. So that teacher, if they're monitoring students in front of them or working on online courses, they are not able to be teaching students in the building. So it's a little bit of a catch-22 there. Okay. So before we get into what we're hoping to move our cyber program to, are there any questions about the first part of the program, or did I miss anything, Dr. C, that we wanted to talk about? Okay. Any questions about our current cyber program? I can't give you a whole lot of information about outside cyber programs. But if you guys have any questions about what we've talked about so far, I'll do my best to try to answer those for you. Okay. So what are we looking for next? Dr. Zalonis and I took over the program 3 years ago. One of my goals, what I wanted to see us do, was to improve the educational piece to our students. To me, that was the most important part of our cyber program, is to improve that educational experience, make it significantly more beneficial to us. The second piece of it was, how can we save some money through this process as well? So what we have seen over the past couple of years, being basically at the mercy of an outside vendor when it comes to issues with the curriculum, issues with how the curriculum operates, technical issues. We're basically at the mercy of that outside vendor to get those issues resolved. And the communication that we see from those teachers of records to our students, because a teacher that could be teaching from California, teaching our kids, there's not that connection with our students. You don't have that connection that our teachers may have. It was a simple email, hey, you're falling behind on your coursework. I know that's not how our teachers would handle that. I know that's not. Our teachers wouldn't be okay with just sending a simple one-line email saying you're behind in your work. So, and also we noticed that the curriculum itself was not the most robust. And there were definitely workarounds that kids could find that could speed them through the process, but not necessarily allow for that vigorous content that I believe that we can provide with our students that are in the building. So what we looked at, you guys, we talked about Canvas before as our learning management system for our teachers and for our students to be able to house our content and provide opportunities for students to learn better when they're at home. If we have to do a virtual snow day, things of that nature, potentially flipped classrooms, provides a great opportunity for our students. That platform does. So Dr. Zalonis, myself, and the leadership team started to toy with the idea of providing our cyber courses, our cyber program, completely in-house, utilizing Canvas as our platform. So what we would like to do, starting pretty directly here, is to develop courses with our teachers, utilizing our content, housing it on Canvas to be our cyber program, utilizing our teachers as the teacher of record. So I'm going to walk you through that and let you know kind of where our conversations have gone. We've involved teachers. We have a group of teachers that have been part of this process already. I've talked with the leadership team as well about it, Dr. Bickhardt as well, just making sure that we're on the right track. Everybody's comfortable with the direction that we're going as we went through this process. But to me, the most beneficial and valuable piece was bringing those teachers in and saying, how do we make this work? How can we provide a quality experience for our kids? So what we're looking at, Canvas is our LMS. I talked about that. It allows students to engage in a learning experience that is significantly more robust than the current platform that we utilize, can provide easy access to links to outside sources, easy access to content directly on the platform, embedded videos. It could be a teacher recording them teaching a lesson and uploading that. There's a lot of opportunities that Canvas allows us to provide a great platform for our students to learn. So one of the main benefits of utilizing Canvas and our teachers, I believe, is that connection between our staff, who they probably already have some type of connection, because we only have a handful of students that start in the cyber program and finish in the cyber program. We often see kids that come from traditional schooling and jump into the cyber program and then back into the building again. So they already have those connections. They have those connections when they're in the cyber program with myself, with Dr. Zalonis. So there's that connection piece. And now you combine that with our teachers providing the material, answering questions, providing support. I think that will provide us with a significantly more comprehensive program than what we are currently using. So a timeline, what has happened up to this point right now. So when Canvas got brought in several years back, we looked at it as the initial piece of it was, let's just work on utilizing this in-house for our teachers as a learning management system. Obviously, when this came was right on the heels of COVID. So it was a thought process of, if we're going to be in and out of the classroom, we want a platform that's going to be more beneficial and conducive for our students' learning. So if you look at the timeline here, basically at the beginning of February in 21 is when our teachers and staff were first introduced to it. May of 21, the teachers were required to get at least one marking period of their content from one of their courses on Canvas. If you fast forward to the fall of 21, we asked that teachers would be ready to teach at least one course utilizing the Canvas platform. And then if you look at the following fall, which is this year, our teachers basically use Canvas as their main learning management system. We previously used Sapphire, but this year we asked them, hey, this is the platform that we're going to be utilizing for our learning management system moving forward. Interesting piece is when we started this, like anything new that's presented to anybody, it is a lot of grumbling and complaining up front. A lot of teachers, they didn't want to switch. They kind of want to stay with it. It was really neat to hear teachers' feedback as we get to this point right now. Dr. Zalonis can probably attest to that a lot more than I can, but teachers saying, okay, this is really cool. This is significantly better than what we were utilizing before. The kids really appreciated it as well. So it was good feedback for us to hear. So what we're looking at is utilizing this platform as our completely asynchronous program. So our cyber kids are going to use Canvas with our teachers of record and our teachers' content, which is invaluable. That means when a kid's struggling, our teachers reaching out to them, not just via email, but they're making phone calls to the parents. They probably already have connections with those families. If a kid's struggling, they can open up our doors to all the resources that we have. Maybe a teacher has a plan period and they say, you know what, hey, if you come on in, I see that you're struggling, come on in, I'll try to help you with some of that stuff. Our teachers are amazing. They do this with our kids in the building all the time. Now we get to open this up to our cyber students outside of the building. Did you have a question, Ms. Beck?
Yeah, is this for K to 12 or?
Yep. So this for right now, so one of the things that we said we want to do is take it slow play this to work out all the bugs and the kinks in a small population first. And then the plan will eventually be to open it up to K to 12. Yes. For right.
Where are you starting?
So we're going to start at the high school level. So we looked at where are most of our courses that we utilize in our current cyber program. Where are we going to be able to see the most usage out of this? And it was clearly at the high school level. Our number of students that are in our cyber program at the high school level are significantly greater than elementary and at middle school. So we said, okay, high school level. What are the subjects that we utilize the heaviest and the most on a regular basis? Those are the subject areas that we're going to try to create some courses first. We'll talk about what that will look like, how we're playing that out moving forward to make sure that before we roll it out to everybody, we do our best to make sure that it is a seamless, smooth process. We get all the bugs and kinks worked out before it is rolled out to everybody. So some of this stuff is I've addressed most of this stuff already in what we've talked about tonight, but just spelling out our teachers, our opportunities that we have here at the school. I hit on it a little bit earlier, but the cost savings as well. We're going to have a little bit of upfront cost we envision by creating the content, but after we have our content created, then it will just be paying the teachers to be able to support if that's the direction we choose to go. So this was basically talking about our process that I had just talked about, saying we're going to slow play this, why we're doing it the way we're doing it. Okay, so what we're going to do, our teachers, if it's approved and this is the direction that we go, the teachers that we've been working with that have agreed to be a part of this, we're basically going to give them an opportunity to start creating a completely asynchronous course. So that's taking the teacher out of that. So they already have Canvas courses created that they utilize in the building. A lot of these teachers have this created. However, completely different than creating a course with the teacher there to be able to walk you through everything that needs to happen, as opposed to take the teacher out of the equation and a student be able to get onto their laptop and seamlessly walk through the course and know what is expected of them. You know, what is the teacher asking me of this? What do I have to complete? So basically, whatever the teacher provides in front of the students is what will need to be put in, and that might change things up a little. There might be some assignments, some other different things that they have in their course that they may not be able to use because it won't be an asynchronous. It won't be able to be an asynchronous activity or a computer or an activity done on a computer. So they're going to have to do some tweaking, but that's what this will look like. We're going to take it one unit at a time. We will take a look at that. We've created basically like a rubric for the teachers of what we want to see during that process, what a quality unit of study will look like on an online platform. Dr. Zalonis is our expert in this area. She'll be monitoring that process that goes along. Her and I will be monitoring that process as it goes along to make sure that we're all of those teachers that will be creating that are doing pretty much basically the same thing, because it's important as opposed to sitting in front of you. It's important for our cyber kids to kind of have a very similar look to a course from course to course. It makes it easier for those cyber kids to know when I get on my online platform, I know my social studies class is going to look very similar to an English class. It takes out a lot of guesswork. So we're gonna monitor that. We'll utilize that rubric to make sure that we're getting where we want to. Once we have provided all the feedback needed to those teachers, we will then kick them loose and say, okay, go ahead and finish your course, because we feel confident they understand at that point what we're looking for in that online course. Once they finish the course, which will hopefully be at the end of this, middle to end of the summer, they will have their work done depending on how they work. We will then again go through back and look at their entire course, make sure that they are continuing to follow that rubric that we created. And if that is the case, if all goes well, then we have ourselves an asynchronous course that will be ready to be rolled out for our students. So this is kind of the timeline that we're looking at right here. Obviously, assuming this is the direction that we decide to go, this is the kind of the timeline that we're hoping to get through. That first course will be approved by the end of the school year through Dr. Zalonis with support from her. At the spring summer timeline is when we will take a look at the entire course, make sure they're following that rubric, and then this fall, those select courses, we will then hopefully try to test pilot with some of our cyber kids this fall and our teachers as well, assuming we go this route. So here's what we're envisioning this will look like. And again, these are just numbers that on the left here is what if we currently use our current platform Edison versus what we potentially could see if we go our in-house cyber program utilizing Canvas as our cyber platform. So right now, we're looking at roughly $560 per course is what it costs us. And if you look at what we're hoping that will be able to cost us with what we're projecting, it'll be about $150 per course. Okay, so in 6 courses in a year, like I talked to you, what the average high school student takes, it's about $3,300 a year. And if we're looking at our platform utilizing our LMS, we're looking at roughly $900 per student per year. So the average of 50 students, you're looking at $168,000. And if we utilize 50 students in ours, that's $45,000. If you stay on the right-hand side in our proposal, we're looking at a stipend, and this was in conversation with the teachers, with the administrative team, and also in conversation with the union as well, looking at a one-time reimbursement for the creation of the course of $3,500 to create the actual course itself. That is taking the teacher out of that process and then putting all of that, what the teacher would say, and there's the language and everything that they would say to make a completely asynchronous course. Okay, so here's what we're looking at for next fall. We would be looking at, we're hoping to get between 6 and 8 courses to be our pilot for next school year. And with that dollar amount, we would be looking at roughly $21,000 to $28,000 for that initial upfront cost of creating a course. For those 6 to 8 courses, keeping in mind that if things go well in that pilot, we will then open that up to add more courses. Again, then we would have that expenditure of creating other courses as well. But once we have our library of courses, then that initial upfront cost of that $3,500 to create that course, we would no longer have that. So, go back one, Wayne, sorry. I got a couple things I want to talk about there. So if you look at the $168,000 that we pay Keola, if we paid our teachers for the 23-24 school year to create that, we're looking at $73,000. So it's basically reallocating funds of where we're going to spend that money. Are we paying an outside vendor for their content and their curriculum, or are we going to pay our teachers to create our content, our curriculum, which I significantly trust that our teachers in our district will create a much more robust learning experience. The curriculum that they will provide for our kids is significantly more beneficial to our students than we are currently getting through Edison and Accelerate Ed. Questions?
Before a question, can I just,
Yes.
Wayne, would you mind going back a slide? I just want to touch on that. This is something that Dr. Zalonis and Mr. Berge came to me about earlier in the year. I just want to say I'm in full support of it. I would much rather pay our teachers and have money go into our district employees than to an outside vendor, especially when we will realize cost savings over time with a better curriculum. I like when they shared this with me, I was like, oh my gosh, like this makes a ton of sense. And anything we can do to improve our cyber program to beat out and compete with the cyber charter programs, which I already know we have better offerings. We already offer more. We can do more for our kids. But you guys saw that other slide. We're talking, 10 times the cost for these kids to go to outside cyber. I mean, I personally would love to see something like this on next week's agenda just to get the course creation piece started. I am perfectly fine with the $3,500 stipend per course. So I would ask that the board consider that for next week, or at the very latest for next month. And I don't know, Mr. Berge, if you want to add to that, but that's my 2 cents regarding that.
It would be very beneficial for those teachers to be able to start work. I know we've talked and I said, obviously this is something we don't want to do until the board has given us a yay or a nay with that. So they're ready to go. So it is at this point, they're just kind of waiting for your direction and what you believe is best.
So for the stipend, would that just apply to the course development, or what about when you have to reevaluate and modify any programs or courses?
I couldn't hear anything you were saying. Sorry, buddy.
That's all right. I'll forgive you. So for the stipend, would that apply just to the development of the course, or is that
Correct. So
about if you have to reevaluate?
Yeah, so good question. I apologize. I kind of breezed over that. So if you look at up there, the proposal, so Once we have the courses created, once they have that stipend for the course created, thank you, I breezed over that real quickly. So we will need teachers of record. What we're currently doing right now is the teachers that are taking a period out of their day, or sorry, a block out of their day to teach that, that's not going to be the case moving forward. Because if we're offering an entire library of courses, we can't take all of those teachers out of classes to teach that. So what we will be doing is we'll be looking at roughly a reimbursement of $150 per student per course is what they will get reimbursed. What a teacher would get to be the teacher of record. Now, maybe somebody's really passionate about creating courses, but they have zero desire to be the teacher of record. From what we're proposing, that will be completely optional. They don't have to be the same teacher. The teacher that creates the course does not have to be the same teacher that is the teacher of record. Can be, but it doesn't have to be. Or if you want nothing to do with creating a Canvas course, but you'd be more than willing to be the teacher of record for that, you can do that. And we're, like I said, that would be a proposal of $150 per student per course. So, which is right around what we're paying Edison at this point right now.
Curiosity question, does multi-language support, translation services play into this at all?
They would have access to the same services that we have in-house. Yep. Is there a Spanish feature in that?
There's options within Canvas to change the language so that there's an automatic translation.
One of the things I'd also like to note, Dr. Zalonis has done a ton of digging. She's got a lot of connections out there throughout the state and in the cyber world. So I don't know if there's any local districts that are doing this. We tried to go to the IU, we tried to go to other districts to try to get an idea of a guide of a direction that we're going. We weren't able to find that, but I feel really confident in the direction that we're going at this point. And I know that we've had quite a few questions from our IU about how we're doing things here. So I feel, with that being said, I feel very confident in what we have proposed here, that I think will be a significantly better educational experience and a cost savings to the districts than what we're currently doing.
So, yeah, Mike, you have on the one slide that's labeled how interested teachers will update their current Canvas materials. Do we have enough interested teachers to provide a full curriculum in the future?
So right now we have a pretty good, with the teachers that we currently have right now, we have a pretty good span of our core content areas at this point right now. So yes, we're able to provide a lot of courses, and that teacher could create 3, 4 courses, 5 courses if there's nobody else interested. But I know once we open it up and we say, hey, here's where the opportunities are, here's what you're going to have to do though. I mean, you're going to have to follow the rubric. You're going to have to meet the expectations for this to be, for you, to be paid, but they're going to have to do that. I'm not worried about having teachers to be able to do that. I'm sure we'll have plenty of teachers that will be able to create those courses.
But then will we also have enough teachers to
Be the teacher of record?
Yes, that we don't actually need to use another outside source?
Yep, and I'm sure any of these guys can speak to the teachers that are always willing to have opportunities to earn extra employment. I don't anticipate that being an issue.
So before we move from this, I want to make a couple points. First of all, when Mike and Kim came to me, this aligns completely with where I see the view of cyber education going. I guess I should start with the fact that we have to pay for, and I'll be the one to say it out loud, $14,000 and $30,000 of taxpayer money out the door is absurd, and it's terrible. And if the state doesn't figure it out, it's a problem. That to me it's a tragedy of what happens in education right now. And if you do the math and how much money we're paying out, it's crazy. Derek, one of the things he has shared with me as we've done this budget process is the fact of what can we control, right? What are the things we can control? Fortunately, we're losing money. How do we control it? We create this. We put our teachers in front of our kids. We create a system that is K-12. And I think that's what Dr. Strasser is getting at, is the more we are consistent across K-12, we don't lose the 49 kids that are in outside cyber either. They talked about just what we're dealing with now. Imagine what we bring back. I would love to have conversations with parents down the road of you're choosing that program when we have a robust, totally connected to the district. You don't have to be in the building. You don't want that. That's what you're concerned with. Imagine that. Another thing they're not saying is we've got kids that want to continue to take additional courses in our high school. They may choose a single course that they couldn't fit in their schedule, depending on where we go. And now it's going beyond our cyber program. It's being, brought into our general population. But it is a spot if we can, and I think that's important to note too. We've brought down the number, we've talked about this of where cyber was. Pre-COVID, I think we're back to pre-COVID numbers. Closer than we were. Numbers have come down, but imagine that 49, beyond just what we're dealing with. Imagine that 49 coming back or half of them coming back. It's $500,000. That's a big savings in our budget. So much good has been done. Before we move on, Dr. Z, I think I want to make sure, is there anything you have to say from in the trenches, day in, day out with this, that the board needs to hear about this program?
I think we've seen a transformation over the past couple of years. We saw Canvas come in and everyone was nervous about it. And as Mr. Berge said, then they started to realize what it could do. And now they're starting to realize what it can do with students and how powerful it can be. Canvas is probably the most widely used LMS, and you're seeing it mostly in higher education, and now it's starting to come into K-12. So we're leading the region with doing this initiative. We're leading the state. I've been hard pressed to find or hear about any public high school any public school district that has been trying to create their own curriculum and deliver it through an LMS to their students as a way of doing cyber education. No one's doing it. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. And if we're able to provide that value to our students with our curriculum and our teachers, we will see those cyber students come back. I was at a conference earlier today, and one of the, there was a CEO of a cyber charter school, and the presenter had made the comment, we're trying to keep our kids from going to cyber charters. And he stood up and he said, I'm the CEO of a cyber charter school. He said, and believe me, I hear that all the time. He said, but I will challenge you, do better so that they don't want to come to my school. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this initiative.
Further question. Once we get this developed, could we market this product to other students, from other districts as a revenue stream? And not give away our information for free?
Don't know that we're able to do that. I think that's an Attorney Beard question.
I think we need to contact Attorney Beard.
Never know. It's so new, We'll just be jealous.
Any other questions? If you do think of something after tonight, do not hesitate to reach out, get a hold of me, and I'll do my best to get you the answer.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving right along. Maintenance, Mr. Hoffman.
It's a hard follow-up.
Good evening. Go to this. So I'm going to show you a little bit what I've been working on now for the last couple of months besides Bacher Elementary. This first slide is it's hard to read, but it's a real good snapshot of where the most of my money in my budget goes. And for the majority of it, it's all to state mandated inspections, preventive maintenance programs, and so on and so forth to keep our schools up to par. The first few line items there, you're going to see some budgetary numbers I put in here. And we're going to go to a couple other pages to make this a little more simpler to read. Start off, what we did last summer is where I'll start here. And we did quite a bit of work, as you guys remember. And a couple little things that really did the job was Greg's middle school. We did the epoxy flooring, which all of you folks, most of you seen anyway, and the gym entrance and the main entrance up there. Another big part last year was insulated the HVAC piping in the first floor of the middle school. That was a pretty lengthy job. We did pave the walking path at JFB again. We landscaped out back the whole area, in our rear entrance and so on and so forth. with our students and Mr. Bittner. We did have the timber harvest last year over at Bacher as well. And upgrading the 2-pipe to a 4-pipe HVAC system in the high school is huge. What we still have ongoing is we still have little bits and pieces of that, the athletic addition and complex work going on. That's coming to a near end here within probably within the next month. We're going to actually have everything completed with that. We do have some punch list items. It's still dangling out there, but we're getting there on that. Currently, we're doing a camera upgrade throughout the district, both interior and exterior cameras. They did do here at White Deer. They're currently working in the middle school, high school now. And as we progress in the project at Bacher, they'll be over there with those cameras. At the same time, we're integrating a brand new software, I guess you want to call it, for our card reader system. So people like Josh can get in the building now for whatever reason, and they wouldn't let him in tonight with his card. But there's conflict between the old system and the new. They're not communicating well. So Josh could get in today, but maybe not tomorrow. It's a process. Currently, they're working in the middle school, high school. They did this. We're going to jump right into Bacher, even though the project isn't where we need it to be right now for that. We're going to go ahead and do that portion of it so we can bring our whole entire school district up to speed on the brand new network. And obviously, we got the JFB renovation project going on. So that brings us to where we usually start in the summertime with a bunch of projects. So I listed a bunch here. You're going to see some at the end that says budget, and you're going to see a great deal of them that says grant money. Catherine and I have been working together for a little while now, and Catherine's writing a grant for some of these things. And we'll go over that, and she'll go more into detail once we get to her safety and security portion of this. But just to let you know what I am trying to budget for this year is to, first of all, some of the renovation stuff at Bacher, but majority of that is all based out of the project money. But I am going to need to finish the second floor of the middle school's pipe installation. So that is in my budget for this year to do that. I'd like to start that right away this summer as soon as school's out. So in my 5-year plan, I had, I'm going to begin on some of this. So my 5-year plan was these parking lots that we have in all of our school districts. So I said, okay, we're done with the renovation out back. So we have parking lots that don't really match, and the parking stalls and stuff need to be relined. And there's also with our safe school stuff, there's some identified parking areas that we need to put out there and so forth, so on and so forth. So what I've done is I got a quote to have that whole rear parking lot, middle school, high school done this year. So I am trying to get that done the first week when we're out of school. So that'll be totally seal coated and new line paint everywhere. So that whole back parking lot will look brand new again. And then as we go on to my 5-year plan, I'm going to jump to the front of this high school, middle school, then come over here to White Deer, and then finish up at Bacher once that project's done over there. That's my plan for this seal coating stuff. Okay, so we move down to the reflective tint on the exterior doors and windows. Okay, so I meet with Safe Schools people as well as Catherine, and it was brought to our attention that these windows here in this school don't have the proper tinting. So I said, well, what is that? And they explained to me that there's a tint that goes on these windows now for Safe Schools that you can see out. It's a reflective tint, but you can't see it. Like, okay, what do I do? So they said, you just get somebody to tint them. So I had United Plate Glass come in and give me a price and to do this summer, to come over here and do all the exterior doors and windows on this whole floor, the first floor, obviously. So that's in my budget to get done as well. I'd like to do that as soon as school open or closes. And then we move down to install an exterior PA at the middle school and high school and White Deer. Again, with PA Safe Schools, we actually kind of discovered that here at White Deer during maybe an Alice training. I think Catherine can explain this a little better in detail, but we need to have a way to be able to contact our students behind the building in a playground or what have you. So we had no PA system here for that. So that brought it to our attention. Well, then we got to think, we don't really have one for the middle school and high school either. So I went ahead and got that. I have it written down as my budget, but I'm actually doing it out of this year's money. So that material has, a purchase order has been issued for that, and equipment is being ordered. So once the weather breaks, it gets a little nicer, we'll be able to get our systems up and running for the middle school, high school in here. Bacher already has one, or will have one. And okay, so we moved down to exterior door signage for the middle school and high school. So you guys are very familiar with the numbers on outside of all the exterior doors around our schools. Well, once we put the new addition on, the numbers don't run in sequence anymore. So it's going to be some work, but I got to take all the numbers off and for almost half the school and put them back up. So I got to buy new numbers. So that's that part. Also, again, Catherine's going to explain a little bit of this. There's some other signage that need to go in, for instance, numbers on exterior windows to match the classroom. So an officer or fire department, what have you, can look outside, reflect the number, and know what classroom they're looking at. Safe schools. So if something would happen inside the school, they know where they're at from outside to inside. So we got to do that this summer as well. Among some other things, exterior directional signage, that's our big signs when they come in and say the district's office is this way, receiving's this way, maintenance, what have you. Those signs need to be upgraded as well. And again, Catherine's going to talk to you a little bit about that here in a minute. We also need a sign for 668 Mahoning Street to identify that property for the school. Okay, so another one I've been working on getting quotes on is replace the high school gym doors. Those doors are shot, they need replaced, and I have 2 quotes on it now. I have a third coming next week to look at that. So I have 3 good budget numbers to look at to get that done. Again, it's a safe schools thing. Ms. Gerton can explain that a little more. And last but least is what every school district is going to, and that's installing the vape detectors in and our restroom areas in the secondary complex. We did, and Catherine's going to again did a great job, got a grant for this. We already are in motion as we speak to get the vape detectors for the restrooms right outside the cafeteria in the secondary, the high school. That's already in motion. We already have those parts ordered. However, we need to look at, as a leadership team and everybody, we want to do the whole entire secondary complex. So we got to take a look, have the people come back in, the contractors, which is going to be NRG. Those detectors will go right into our camera system, and it works with our hardware and software we have now. So they're currently looking at that. We talked to Catherine, I met with Jonathan today and brought him up to speed to what we're going to do. So we got to look at how many devices we're going to need, get them on order, and then get them installed as we receive them. That's that. This is my 5-year plan, which is I'm collaborating with everybody. It's just not my wish list. It's a wish list of our leadership team here at the district, and we add to it as we think of things. But this is just a basic 5-year plan. There's like the seal coatings in there. We do want to look at painting the interior of this building. As you look around, you're like, yeah, this is the mint green. It's probably from whenever they built the place, but we'd like to get this building painted as well interiorly. You look around in our high school gymnasium, that is in dire need of a fresh coat of paint and a new look. So there's some of those things in here. Renovate the nurses suite. Catherine and I have been trying to do this for a couple of years now, and it does need to be renovated, and we're trying to fit it in somehow, some way. And also at the very end, I don't know if I'll get it done in my tenure, but the last piece of the HVAC projects would be the middle school, to convert that over to a 4-pipe system at some point to match the rest of the district. It's still a 2-pipe system. We did well by insulating the pipes in the first floor, and it's going to be the second floor this year. So the whole rainforest technique over in Greg's school kind of stopped, which was great. but it should be updated to match everything else. So that's that. Always open to suggestions from the board, from leadership and everybody else to, get some of these other ideas, they're not just mine, to get some of this stuff done. Does anybody have any questions for me? I know that was kind of quick, but gives you a general idea what all the work we're going to be doing this summer. So with that being said, I'll turn the rest of this over to Catherine and with her safety and security.
Thank you. Am I on? Okay, there we go. If you go to the next slide, you'll see the school safety and security as it shows up in Derek's budget book. So it's the function code 2660. The notable changes from last year to this year on this budget area is the addition of the 2 SROs. So we traditionally had 1 SRO, and then we were able to acquire grant money through the PCCD competitive grant to bring on a second SRO, and that was covered for 2 years. And then as a board, you moved forward with adding additional 2 positions in the general budget for this year. We have hired Officer Davis and continue to look for officer number 4. There is definitely outreach and networking going on within the Milton Police Department, especially our SROs, to try and secure that number 4. I know we had somebody do a walkthrough a couple weeks ago that we were all hopeful for, and that didn't work out. But we are certainly in a similar situation as neighboring districts looking for additional school police officers or school resource officers. So we remain hopeful that that position will get filled. When you look at the object codes of 581, 582 should be up there as well. That really is training for the new officers. So if we, for some reason, are unable to secure that 4th officer, that budget line is probably over budgeted for next year. We lucked out with Officer Davis, who was already working part-time at Milton, taking our SRO position. So what I projected for uniforms and equipment for the SRO this year, we came way under budget for that because he had already had the uniforms and equipment and much of the training. So that was helpful to this year's budget. But again, depending on who's hired for that 4th position, that may come in before the end of the year. So it would fall on this budget. If not, it could fall into 23-24 budget. And the other big area of change is under equipment. If you go back to when we began these budgets in October, the secondary principals were certainly talking about the increase in amount of vaping that they were seeing, and they needed some technology to help out. So at the time that this budget was submitted to Derek, we did put in, I believe, 19,000 or 20,000 specifically for vape detection. It is not cheap. This morning, we got the number about $1,400 per vape detection device. And some of our secondary bathrooms are quite large. They may need 2 or 3 per bathroom. So the decision was to try and do a multi-year implementation of vape detection devices. So that 20,000 was our first year of a multi-year implementation. As Jeff alluded to, there's been a little change to that because at the same time I was able to find a grant, a competitive grant, and that was awarded. So we just got another $50,000 that we can put in that area. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. So when you look at the overall school safety and security budget compared to a school district our size of our full budget, when you're looking at about $230,000, it doesn't seem to be much. I just want to assure you that we do a lot more in this area outside of what falls into the general budget. Some of it is done with networking and relationships we build with outside agencies, and some of it is done through grants. For example, about 3 or 4 years ago, I started talking with DTAC, which used to be BSI, and talked about wanting to bring counselors and psychiatrists into the building so our kids were not waiting 3 months for a psychiatrist, having to rely on parents for transportation, leaving the school setting, driving a half an hour, doing a 45-minute appointment. As I joke, head through the McDonald's drive-through for some lunch, and then another half hour back to school, and they miss a huge chunk of time to get services that they need. But we also want to balance that with not having such a negative impact on their academic time. So we wanted to bring those services in-house. So at that time, we started talking about becoming licensed as an outpatient clinic site and be able to bring a counselor and a psychiatrist into the building. And that has been a work in progress for well over 3 years. Since then, we were able to get the community and school-based behavioral health program in the middle school. That came after we started talking about the outpatient clinic. But I think Aaron's here, Greg's here, certainly can talk about the benefit that that program has brought to the middle school. And last I knew, we were full to capacity in that program, which again provides mental health services in our building real time for our students. About 3 months ago, we found out that the licensing was approved for all of our buildings for those that outpatient clinic. And just last week, they were able to staff that program. And in the high school right now, we have the counselor, which will be giving us 2 days a week. And as referrals grow throughout the district, they will be able to increase with our need. Additionally, we'll get about 3 hours a month of a psychiatrist, which again, I kind of had a laugh when Mike was talking about cyber. There are very few districts that can say that we actually have a psychiatrist in-house available to our kids. All the services that they provide will be paid for through the student's insurance. So there are some insurance requirements, but medical assistance is approved, for those counselors and that psychiatrist, which for a school district with the high free and reduced lunch percentage that we have, that is the majority of our kids. And they are seeking additional medical insurance approval, especially Geisinger medical insurance. So they'll continue to grow that clinic. So that's a great example of, services that have been brought to Milton, but would not show up in our safe schools budget. The other idea that came to mind was many school districts locally are moving to canine officers. We recently had the drug dogs come through. Not only are they a great deterrent for students to not bring, those kind of substances in the school, but, if they are in the school system, they'll find it. For those who have seen it, I think John was very excited when he saw those dogs at work. So many districts in the area are finding vape detecting dogs, drug detecting dogs. And one of the things that I've learned recently in my research is that the drug dogs that are coming out now are not being trained on marijuana because of the medical marijuana movement. So to find a dog that is sniffing for marijuana, which tends to be the drug of choice in our buildings, is hard to come by. So I started some research on what that would look like for our school district, obviously preliminary research, and applying the processes that I apply, I'll look for funding as well. So those are kind of, long-term type of initiatives or programs that kind of come up with these ideas, and sometimes they take a little bit to move forward, but you won't see them on our safe schools budget. So if you go to the next slide, back in, I believe, September or October, when we talked about adding additional school resource officers, I shared that the week before, the state released some safe schools money. And at the time, I had the list of allowable and non-allowable expenses, and school resource officers were on the allowable expenses list. So the grant application went in and it was sent back because the state applied a tiered school safety and security checklist for schools to use. So there's tier 1 requirements, tier 2 requirements, and tier 3 requirements. And what the state came back and said was, okay, Catherine, you want to add school resource officers. That is not being rejected at this time, but you have to prove that the district has met every single tier 1 requirements before we would consider a tier 2, which is to add additional school resource officers. If we had none, having 1 school resource officer for the district was considered a tier 1, but to add additional school resource officers, the state identified that as an advanced tier school safety component. So when Jeff talks about us working together, what we've been working on is how do we resolve the tier 1 pieces of school safety that we were missing in order to leverage some of the additional grant money towards the school resource officer. So here we are months later, we're still working through it, but I think I'm hopeful by the end of the next 2 weeks, this grant application will be back in and will satisfy what the state wants, but still also allow us to leverage some money to the school resource officers. So much of what Jeff talked about on his list was really prioritizing what we can do this school year through his budget, what we can wait on and wait for that grant application to be approved, and what our own current working relationships, people in here working with the buildings, who can do what for us in a timely manner. And it was a puzzle piece. There's been stuff that I was going to take on the grant, and then he said, no, let me do it on my budget. But I think we're in a good spot moving forward. But within the physical safety part of the budget, there's 2 separate budgets in this PCCD grant. Bilingual signage is a tier 1 requirement. So anywhere we have directional signs or building signs, the requirement is that it is done in multi-languages. So JF Bakker's new sign going in, we wanted an electronic sign there. I'm taking the expense of the sign, not of the installation of it, because we will be able to put bilingual messaging on that electronic sign. As you enter the secondary complex off of Mahoning, there's directional signs, turn left, turn right, and it tells you where the middle school is, where the high school is. Again, a tier 1 requirement is those signs are in multi-languages. So that was not a priority of ours. So that's a great example of, we would not have done that, but we are required to do it in order to leverage money in other areas. So it is a good sign, but it's going to have to come down, and we're going to have to put up signage with English and Spanish in there. As you move around the side of the building, there's another exterior sign that will be removed. Window numbering system, which is what Jeff talked about. So if there's an emergency, the fire department would know where high school room 237 starts and stops. There might be 5 windows in there, so we'll have a number on each end, and first responders will know, all of the space in between is that classroom. Again, not something that we would have considered a priority going into this school year, but the state is saying, yes, that has to be done before you can move into tier 2 or tier 3 requirements. So that will be part of the grant. Replacement of targeted indoor areas. So tier 1 says that there are certain large areas that when they are not in use must be locked. And Mr. Berge and Mr. Rance have some questionable gym doors that are in need of replacement. Because of the initial costs that are coming in for that, that was one area that Jeff and I decided to split, that I was going to take some of that amount into the grant and he was going to take some of it into his general budget. But again, we'll be able to say in the grant application that we have a plan to implement that tier 1, and that'll be done by a certain time. Hallway naming signs. I think, to my knowledge, middle school was the only building that has their hallways named. Again, this has been a conversation for years. What do you name the hallways? Do you name it so the students understand what you're talking about, or do you name it for the first responders to understand where they are? So is it hallway C, northeast direction, or is it, you know, Panther hallway? So the decision has to be made. And I think we're going to do both. We're going to call it something that is meaningful to the people in the building, but in the lower right-hand corner or upper right-hand corner, we'll do the directional signages, which is what is needed for the first responders. If there's a bad day here and we have a lot of officers from other areas coming into our building outside of our state police and our local police, they are going to need to know directionally where they're moving in the buildings. So again, a tier 1 that needs to be taken care of. Any additional money, which right now looks to be about $60,000 to $70,000, then I'll be able to leverage towards the school resource officer of the $130,000 that is available in that budget. Part of the same grant is a mental health budget. I cannot take any mental health money and put it into physical safety. Again, we have moved forward in many areas with counseling and with outside agencies coming in, but this is a standalone budget. There were some recommendations made. The PBIS, or the school-wide positive behavior supports programs, that's now K to 12. I've been able to put in some money for rewards, incentives, if you will. I had to do it in a very creative way. I couldn't buy t-shirts. I couldn't buy, you know, lunch tickets. But I give Tia Dreckman a lot of credit. She said it would be nice if we could do something bigger or outside. So I put in some money for guest passes. I'd like to talk to the Y, to the Miller Center, to the yoga centers, to see if they would be willing to issue, you know, daytime guest passes for families as rewards. I understand I might be sitting next to a YMCA board member now. So the hope is that we can showcase some of our great community partners through our school-wide positive behavior program as well, with some guest passes. Tia, again, at the middle school, was asking for money for feminine hygiene products. She had data showing that many of our young girls were not attending school when they were having their menstrual cycle. Their families could not afford hygiene products. She herself started a program within her building, and she was seeking donations from relatives, from coworkers, and asked if there could be any funding that would be available to support that program. I then spoke to the high school, who reiterated, yes, that's a problem at the high school. Our guidance counselors, our school nurses, then went down to the guidance counselor here at White Deer. Is this an issue in 5th grade? She welcomed any help there. So kind of an unspoken or not really openly talked about area of need for our students. And it does fit into this grant. You know, anything that we can do to improve attendance and make young girls feel comfortable being at school. So there's a couple $1,000s in there to support that program as well. Short-term counseling and life coaching through Gaggle telemedicine. This is a consortium with through the IU. We all are familiar with Gaggle that work in the buildings, because this is our system that if our students are writing about, words like fight, suicide, kill. Our system flags those words and brings it to the attention of our administrators. That is part of our insurance process to keep our technology insurance on a lower scale. Also helps with obviously school safety and security, because then we're able to check in with those kids and make sure everything's okay and they're not just writing a fictional story for ELA class. So this program, Gaggle, they now have telemedicine. They have short-term counseling. If it's not a Pennsylvania counselor, you have to call it life coaching. And so we bought into a couple of thousands of dollars worth of hours for this service. So if I'm a student who has had 5 discipline referrals in the last month, this is an opportunity for the student or the family to use this short-term counseling for a targeted purpose. Perhaps I had a death in my family. It's not something that the student may need more long-term, but could benefit from talking to a counselor for a couple of sessions. So this is a different model than the counselors that we have in the school setting. Different than the outpatient counseling that we have now through DTAC, and much different than the mental health program at the middle school that's going on. So when we look at a multi-tiered system of support for our kids that are struggling, this definitely will fill a niche that the guidance counselors and our social workers were trying to do among all of the other responsibilities that they have during the day. So we'll try it out for the rest of the school year and see if that is something that we want to continue with long term. The last piece is an additional guidance counselor. Again, when I did this application in the beginning of the school year, I had a guidance counselor position in there. And our guidance counselors right now are grant funded through a federal grant through COVID. So I was hoping we can go from one grant paid position to another grant paid position. And the government came back, or the state came back and said, no, that's not allowed. If you are going to add a position, it has to be truly an additional position. Well, we certainly don't want to be adding positions in a situation where we know that we're going to be losing a lot of federal money, and we've got to look at every position and whether or not we can sustain it over time. But I didn't want to leave perhaps $70,000 on the table in this grant. So I approached John about kind of a creative idea. We have one of our guidance counselors who is starting our school psych program in the fall. Eventually, the plan would be that she would be emergency certified into the school psych position once she is able to do a certain amount of work towards the position, which would then vacate a guidance counselor position. We did talk with the principals in our budget conversations if we could go down one guidance counselor when that would happen. And it was decidedly argued against. Like in this day and age, with the number of issues, social emotional issues that our kids have, they would not decrease by one guidance counselor. So my thought is to put into this grant a one-year grant funded guidance counseling position, knowing that that within a year or by next school year, the 24-25 school year, we would likely be moving our guidance counselor from her guidance counseling position into a school psych position. There is plenty of work for this additional person to do, not only in mental health and coordinating mental health K-12, but we could use them in our assessments, our special ed assessments, our gifted assessments. So they would still be in the role of a guidance counselor, but we would be able to pull some responsibilities off of each of the building guidance counselors and put it in the hands of this extra position for a year until we could get people aligned and school psych in place with that emergency certification. So that is my game plan for a one-year grant-funded position to add another guidance counselor instead of leaving that money on the table with the state. Any questions about the PCCD grant? I will say in the general budget, much of this is not budgeted for. If for some reason we don't get these, the grant money for these I identified areas, they won't happen. So we're not going to add a guidance counselor if it's not grant funded. That's why some of the things that we talked about are in Jeff's budget. So even if we don't get the grant, those items will still be done. So all those tier 1 pieces are taken care of. So exciting news Friday afternoon. It was a great way to leave the work week. Again, the conversation at the beginning of the school year with Mike and Andrew was about the increased number of vaping incidents they're dealing with. There were some issues at a football game, which then brought Greg and his team into the conversation. And again, we looked to being fiscally responsible, that we would do a multi-year implementation of vape detectors in the secondary complex. At the same time, I went looking, and I went back to them and I said, hey, I think I can write a grant, a competitive grant, and we might be able to do the whole secondary complex if I get the grant. We had to build a program. It was an equipment and program grant. In order to get the full $50,000, we also had to do an educational piece and a support piece. So within the grant that was awarded, we were notified on Friday. There is about $45,000 for the actual vape detected devices. There is some money for catch my breath training. So our school nurses and SRO and our home and school visitor will need to get catch my breath trained because they will be part of this multi-tiered system of support for students that are caught vaping. So for example, you're caught the first time and you are talking with the school nurse about the medical components and what the chemicals in the vape will cause. Also talk to the school resource officer and talk about the legal implications, not only the health implications, but the legal implications of purchasing or bringing that type of material into the school setting. Student gets caught the second time, and now we're bringing the home and school visitor in because now we want to look at the why. Why, after getting in trouble the first time and having school consequences, health consequences, legal consequences, would you still continue this behavior? Catch My Breath has some online educational videos that are also part of it. But now we're trying to talk about the why. Is it a coping strategy? Are you using it to assist with anxiety? Or are you using it because of coping strategy for what might be going on in your life, and trying to provide some sort of social emotional support as opposed to the student turning to the vape. Or if the student feels, or the parent feels that there is potentially some additional drug and alcohol issues, then referrals can be made to the proper area for that student to get some additional help. Again, similar to that, if a student's caught the third time, there's some additional educational component to it, and the counseling piece kind of changes already. And in addition to the counseling, the recommendation would be a drug and alcohol evaluation, which could be done through our SAP team, through our Northumberland County and CMS partners for a drug and alcohol evaluation. For everyone, we call it a universal education. So everyone, grades 5 through 12, will receive education in the illegality and the negative effects of vaping, which some of that has already occurred this school year outside of the grant. So that'll be a continuation of that. That got me to about 46,000. And an allowable expense under this grant was for administrative oversight. So I was able to put 3,500 into the grant for admin oversight of beginning this program and overseeing the vape detection as well. So that would likely be leveraged against my salary. So 3,500 of my salary will be paid for out of this grant instead of out of the general budget. So that's an overview of that grant. I think I can speak for the secondary. We're excited to get that ball rolling. Hence, when Jeff said NRG was in the building this morning, we got up and went over and had the conversation with them, and we'll get some budget numbers from them. I am hoping that 45,000 will do the entire building, secondary building, and we can take that 20,000 that's in the general budget now out and not have to use that money, and that would decrease that school safety and security budget by about 20,000 as well. Any questions there? Okay, lastly, again, I go back to the 200,000 for school security. Sometimes is interpreted as they're not doing enough. So I started this last year. The grants on the last slide, Dwayne, if you can advance, just added the 50,000 from the competitive grant for the vape detectors, and we are up to about $3 million leveraged. So Daphne's federal funding budgets that she is managing, and mine tend to be the PCCD and the PDE grants. When you look at social, emotional, mental health, school safety and security, since 2020, we've been working with about $3 million in grant funding. I'll add that 260,000 when it's official, but it's not official yet, so I'm going to keep that off. But that's that money's a work in progress as well. That's all I have. Any additional questions or?
To absorb.
I don't have my glasses on, Mrs. Rance.
I said it's a lot to absorb. Thank you.
It is a lot to absorb, yes.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Incredible work.
Before we move, I want to make one, I'm going to step back to Jeff's budget and make one, I think it's important, public comment. He referenced 668 Mahoning Street, and I think it's been discussed briefly, but I think it's important to say publicly. So that building was bought, designed for offices. We are intending to use it for offices. My opinion coming into this role is it is not designed to move 14 people over there or something to that level. So the intention of that building and the offices that are there is it's going to become our human resource and business office. It means I can move Derek out of my office. Sorry. All kidding aside, I think it puts us into a nice position when we're dealing with an HR side of it, a business side of it. If people are coming in, it's very well, you know, when you see it, we'll go over and see it at some point soon. Being honest with all of you at the board, I don't feel comfortable moving the leadership side of admin when it comes to instructional leadership out of a building. I think it's important for us to be there, be present. If at some point down the road, we come up with a good plan of that being used differently, that's fine. But for the current situation we're going in, that's the decision. That's what we're working towards with 668. And we can always adapt that. I mean, the advantage of a property like that is it has its value. It's very well done from what I've seen inside. I haven't been there in a few months, but I just want to be very publicly clear. That is the intention of the building as we move, hopefully into the spring. It might take us till summer till we get everything done.
So originally, when we were going to move the district office over there, that eliminated the need to do some recommended security upgrades to the district office. Does that put those back on the table then?
I guess I'd have to look at that. I don't think we've had a lot of conversation about what we're missing there at the district office.
I think what Mr. Frederick might be alluding to is we talked about moving the high school office into the district office because it has a secure vestibule and the front of the high school doesn't have one. Do you want to talk about the downside of moving the, yeah.
Well, let me say this before Mr. Rand says that. That was the first conversation we had was if we believed immediately we could use that, then we would have moved in that direction immediately. I think it's very difficult with the nature of how it's set up. And there is a cost that comes in on going through walls. So I'll let you go from there. Might have been our first conversation when I took the job.
Sure, yeah, I mean, just to be real succinct about it, so understanding the logistics and the layout of the high school versus the district office, there is only one kind of entryway, which the board knows, coming through the district office. You have to walk through the office, through the district office conference room to come into the literacy cafe. That is the only access point between the district office and the high school office. So just from a logistics standpoint, when you talk about our office on a day-to-day basis, it's a very busy place. There are parents coming in and out. There are students coming in and out, teachers coming in and out, meetings happening, going on, just a lot of activity. And to have that access point be our students having to go through our literacy cafe, which is used for an abundance of things, through the conference room, which we would need to utilize for a myriad of different, meetings, IEP meetings, team meetings, parent conferences, into the office, and then not having kind of a dedicated waiting area. It makes the logistics of operating on a day-to-day basis very difficult. That being said, I do understand the importance of us upping our security in that. So, we've had a lot of conversations, understanding there are pros and cons to both, but the day-to-day logistics of us being in the district office without having kind of a secondary access point makes it difficult.
Food service.
Moving on, Ms. Reese, please, food service.
Great, so I promised to keep this short and sweet, but we did look at tonight as a really great opportunity to be able to update you as to where we stand with CEP, since the last time we really talked about it was in August prior to the start of the school year. So if you go to the first slide, Dwayne, this is a recap of what I presented to you in August. So this was created via the state CEP calculator tool, which basically kind of gave you predictions of where you could end up when you transition to CEP based on a couple different scenarios. So the column where you see current, that's not current year. That's pre-COVID current year, the standard national school lunch program, standard national school breakfast program, and the reimbursement procedure for that. So then scenario 1 and scenario 2 is both operating under CEP, but just with variations in the breakfast and lunch participation. So one is, I believe scenario 2 is higher than scenario 1 when it comes to participation. And then scenario 3 is operating CEP, but without any change in participation from where we were last school year. So you can kind of look at that as a refresher. And I'm going to go in to talk to you about what our current participations are right now and where we stand. So if you go to the, perfect, Dwayne, thank you. So the graph on the left is comparing the 2018-2019 school year with our participation so far this year. So obviously, what immediately stands out as alarming is that month of October. And I was talking to Derek about that, and I said, I about had a heart attack when I looked at that. So when I dug into it, I feel very strongly that the reason for that is that in October of 2018 and 19, we had 5 more operating days than what we did this October. So currently, when we are out an operating day, we lose out on approximately $8,000 to $9,000 in reimbursement. So that's my explanation for that drastic decrease of why our participation is down when you compare 2018 to 2019 to this year. December and January, there were a difference of a day or two, but nothing significant like October. So I don't really have a pinpoint as to why that's down. I know our enrollment is down from that year. I know that our cyber numbers have doubled when you compare that to 2018, 2019. Whether they directly play a role or not, I don't know. But those are just the thoughts that are going through my head. The graph on the right, though, gives you a comparison of our participation last year compared to this year. And I am thrilled to see that we are up every single month that we've been operating. So the only thing I could ask for is that it would be higher, but I'm very pleased that we've seen an increase from the start of the school year. So that's good. So if you move on, Dwayne, thank you. This is just a quick recap of kind of our monthly ins and outs and where we stand. So if you're looking at the left side, total payables, August and September, it's kind of a little down because we're sitting on, when you compare last year to this year, I kind of take that with a grain of salt because we're sitting on inventory that we're able to use. August is a partial month, so we don't have a full month staffing that we're putting out. So, you know, it looks like we spent a lot less when we compare to the previous year. However, if you move down to October through January, you can see that our expenses have significantly increased due to we increased the pay of our staff. So we're paying out more, but also the cost of goods is just crazy, as we all know. So that's just a quick snapshot of that. If you go all the way over to the right, the profit and the loss, again, those first 2 months I kind of take with a grain of salt, but they do paint a really pretty picture. What obviously stands out is October, and we did take a hit in October. However, that month we did have 3 pay periods. So, you know, our salary and insurance runs about $60,000 a month. And we had 3 pay periods that month. So we did hit the negative that month. The other thing to note on this chart is that in December, that looks really nice too. But I don't just want to, you know, paint everything in rainbows and butterflies. I want to be completely honest. And so in December, we actually would have taken a hit had we not received supply chain assistance funding from the state. I believe we got almost $59,000 in supply chain assistance funding, and that funding is granted to help us with the increased cost of goods since COVID. And December is also a short month to note. When you compare it to other months during the school year that have 19 days, 22 days, December we were only operating for 15 days. So I cannot stress just how much of a perfect example that is on how participation affects our success in this program. So I wanted to include that up there for you. But overall, I'm pretty happy so far with the way the year is going. Our participation is up. We're still in a really great spot with our accounting, but kind of wanted to give you a quick little snapshot. So if you move on, I knew that tonight I wanted to kind of give you an idea of what we were potentially saving our district families. So if you look at the top, what I've done is I've pretty much taken what we would have charged for an elementary lunch and a secondary lunch, and I took that times 176 days in this school year. And for a family of one student that has a student K through 5, we would be saving them $440 a year. Since we met in August, Pennsylvania adopted universal free breakfast. So that took effect October 1st, I believe it was. So when you look at this chart, I did not account for breakfast because everybody's getting free breakfast anyway. So this is only lunch. But then down at the bottom, essentially what I did was I took that same data that I presented to you back in August, and I used our most recent free and reduced student data as of May 2022. I figured out how many students in our district would actually be paid and reduced had we not participated in CEP. I used that data and compared it with our enrollment this year to figure out how many students that is. And so district-wide at the K through 5 level, lunch only, you can see the savings if the students attend school every day and if they decide to buy a school lunch every day. This is what we could potentially be offering our families as a savings. And then you can, of course, see the secondary savings there. Again, lunch only. Will universal free breakfast continue? I don't know. Will I be able to, do this again? Of course, yes, but maybe next year I'd be able to present a savings in breakfast as well. But so, yeah, that's pretty much it. And when I put it on paper, I was actually quite shocked myself and surprised because that is substantial. So Dwayne, next, if you would please. So, as it stands right now, if I had, at the beginning of August, I presented to you that CEP is a 4-year cycle. However, we can bow out at any time if we need to, if we decide that the program is not working for us. I can also resubmit our identified student percentage data, which would then result in us getting higher reimbursement at the free rate. I did check on that, and I am super excited to announce that our direct cert students, so our identified student percentage, is actually increased by 65 students this year compared to the data that I submitted June 30th to apply for the program. So I do intend to resubmit data and get higher reimbursement next year. But I am working very hard. I do direct cert several times a week just to try to capture as many students as we can, because once they're directly certified during a school year, they stay for the remainder of the school year. Regular reminders. I think a big part of the success was that Norm did an amazing job with that video that helped us to promote this program. We're constantly putting information out on our elementary menus, reminders on our secondary menus that, hey, it's free, please take advantage. And to consistently evaluate our participation to make sure that we're not seeing any drastic decreases in participation. And if we do start to see that, why and what can we do? Are we doing everything we can to ensure that every kid gets a school breakfast or a school lunch? I feel fully confident at this point where we are that we can continue to operate as a self-funded operation. And if we end the school year in a really positive standing that I think that we will, I do plan to come up with a 3, 5, 10-year equipment replacement plan. I'm not sure if any of you know that I'm pretty sure that all of the equipment that is located in my kitchens is from the renovation when I was still in high school. So that was quite some time ago. And we are constantly putting some Band-Aids on a lot of our very important pieces of equipment that we use on a daily basis. Some considerations, however, are that food prices are again supposed to increase an additional 6 to 12%. I kind of joke with people in the department that even our USDA offerings that are supposed to be super cheap are no longer cheap anymore. So that's another thing to consider. And then also we're currently down 6 part-time positions. So my girls are really operating bare bones and you can see that daily. So if we can get those positions filled, or at least some of them, and eventually open our dish room at the secondary level, we still haven't been able to do that because of staffing. So we're using all paper products. But then I will have increased expenditures with staffing as of course, as a result of that. So again, this is just a really quick snapshot to give you an idea of where we're at mid-year. And then of course, I'll give you another one probably end of year before the start of next school year. Does anybody have any questions or any comments?
I have a comment. I'm excited not to pay the $880 per year. I am enjoying that benefit, so I just want to share how happy I am about that, and the fact that it's benefiting the district as a whole is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
How is the paper budget versus employee?
How's what the paper budget?
Your paper products budget at the secondary versus what you pay out in salaries.
It's insane. Like the cost of, like, I think for, so for example, like a 4-ounce paper souffle cup, that used to be like $23 a case is now $97 a case. Our food trays, and let me just say that the prices are constantly fluctuating. Like daily, I am getting email updates from our distributors saying, here's another price change coming. Here's another letter from the manufacturer. I swear I'm comparing prices across my distributors in my dreams at night, because I'm trying to be as financially responsible, as I possibly can be. But paper products are crazy right now for me. Yeah, and we blow through them. So to me, it would be much cheaper to be able to get staff in there and not, and operate our dish room
Right.
and not have to spend the money on the paper products.
That's what I was wondering. What-
Yeah,
What savings
much-
we would be at by having that
much
employee?
cheaper. It would be much cheaper. Yeah.
Well. You know what I mean? Like, where the balance is.
So if anybody knows anybody that, that is available during the day, send them my way.
And I think that tees up Dr. Bickhart and our staffing discussion.
So as Dwayne shifts over to that document, I just think it's, a lot of information that was just given, but I can't say enough about the importance of what we just went over and what it does for the future of Milton. I start with creative ways and technology that we're looking at to do things differently that improve us into the 21st century, to Mike's work with Dr. Z on cyber and what that impact could be. It's absolutely incredible the time they put into that. Next step in that are sitting with, the teachers in the union and now, with your support, moving that forward. We need to have those conversations that allow that to happen. It's incredible. Jeff and I have spent a ton of time looking at, the future. We're going to do a really more detailed 5-year plan for you that really kind of times things out. That's a goal of ours. We're future focused and it's just as important to do a major project as it is to make sure we have money to do things throughout the course of time to keep ahead of it. And I would tell you that one of the most critical things I've seen since I've been here is, Catherine's ability to work with our principals on safety things. It's been phenomenal. There's a lot of work being done. I mean, she said it Friday afternoon, I hear this scream because the grant came through, and then I shared it with all of you last night. I will also tell you that it was, I think, the only smile I saw in Mike and Andy's face yesterday. It's the only time they smiled. It was a rough day for them. We won't say why, but they were happy we got the grant for the high school. They were focused on their professional happiness, correct? You see that?
They were not green with.
They were green with anger. We'll leave it at that. So all kidding aside, and you'll see it again, I'm sure, when we come together next month. It is such a privilege to work with this team and the work they do each and every day. And I think the thing I'm proud of the most is the collaboration, the working together. And I'll end with, I truly believe, and she doesn't want to take credit for it, the amount of work Ashley has put in to CEP is a community changing event. Whether we want to believe it or not, look at those numbers. They speak for themselves. Without her initiative, her conversation with all of us, it changes things for many of our community members, period, and our families. It's incredible. Okay, staffing. We're going to fly through this because this is what my belief system is with this piece, so you all know. I believe going into next year, after year one of seeing what we're doing here, there are not great changes coming to our staffing projections next year. And I'll take you through where I think we're going to go. So most importantly, I think it's important for everyone to understand, to go to the next piece there, Dwayne. And there's small numbers. The board has it in front of you. Milton has a declining enrollment. I give credit. This document was handed to me. It's been done for many years, which is very helpful as a new superintendent. Our enrollment's going down. We had 1 year where there was a +12. We fixed cyber a little bit and we get kids back. That'll increase. I think there's a nice conversation we're having about what does the future of the throughway look like? Will it help us? Maybe, maybe not. If it brings jobs and families, that's a positive. So we're hopeful. But most importantly, when we look at staffing, And we look at the projections for the future, and we referenced this when we were together last month when Derek did the initial board presentation on the budget, is we need to make staffing decisions that are in the best interest of our students and class size. Does it mean reductions? Yes. Over the next few years, it will mean a general reduction in staffing based on our enrollment. We met with White Deer, we met with Bodker. I've had a chance, and I'm going to meet with high school tomorrow, middle school next week. We're talking through, Derek's doing a great job of sharing with everybody the actual budget process. I'm following up with our decisions to move or shift staff or not replace something are individual decisions. Example, we have one retiree right now. I highly anticipate we will replace that position based on the nature of the position. So it's not about reductions just because somebody left. We need to be targeted with that. And we got to look at that over the course of time and what puts us in position to do that. And that's a very important comment. There are some things I think we need to look at over the next few years that put us in position to reduce or to make solid decisions on our programming. So with the knowledge that, you know, our numbers are declining, and if you look to the elementary schools, next page, you know, this is the first point you're going to see where I put a projected column. And yes, it's empty as of today. And I will explain why at the end. But when you look at 23, 24, I'm projecting that we keep our class sizes the same. Now, something changes with kindergarten enrollment, we'll take a look at that, but I will always advocate that the smaller our kindergarten classes are, the better off we are in setting kids up for success, you know, especially still coming out of COVID where some kids had preschool experiences, you know, and some didn't. So that is currently keeping us exactly where we are for next year. You go to the actual projections, when we look at the actual elementary, it kind of breaks down. The next slide there, Dwayne. It just breaks down where we were, where we are. It's not really, I know it looks like a reduction of 0.1, 0.05. Some of it is my understanding of how 0.15 positions work and all of that. But it's pretty much keeping a status quo at the elementary level. So I think, being transparent, the reality going into 23, 24 is fifth grade will probably, our intention is fifth grade will still be here next year. So this year's fourth graders will all come here for fifth grade. Why? When Bodker is being renovated, there is always a pod that is closed. You think structurally, we are not changing anything about the structure or what's open and closed. Many of you know we did a community forum. We're trying to get feedback. We are going to do the same thing with students at the high school, middle school level. We're also going to come over here and we're going to sit with fifth grade and talk to the kids about what do they like, what do they don't like about being together. So we have that as we go to make a more formal decision of the future of our elementary schools. I anticipate, we're here tonight, March, we're going to hit more of the instructional things for 23, 24. My intention is coming back to you in April. Two things. Catherine led a little bit there about some safety things we're doing, and we really are going to dive into some more of that. But I also think it's the time we need to begin talking to our community about what do our schools look like at the elementary level for the 24, 25 school year. Is it K-5 here, K-5 back to Bodker when the project's done? Is it K-3 at Bodker, 4 and 5 over here? So again, being transparent and saying that, we need to have that conversation. I will tell you as a board, when you realign and you bring positions together and grade levels together, that is going to be where we can make some reductions in staffing that do not impact our class sizes. Okay, we are talking to our teachers about that too, so they are part of the conversation. Is it hard to move people around? Sure. Are there pros and cons to everything? Yes. First and foremost, do we need to understand transportation if we even discuss that? Absolutely. But it is a major conversation in the reduction of staff. And then when you look at, is it 8 kindergartens? Maybe. But maybe it's 7 first grades then because of them all coming together instead of 8. It is not, very clearly, it is not a reduction of one class. And if you realign, it's not, oh, 8 goes to 7, 7 goes to 6, 6 positions are gone. You can do that. Not saying it's going to be your best decision when it comes to class size. So again, my point here is we're projecting out for next year based on the same standards we're living in right now. 5th grade all here. K4 over at Bacher, and then a K4 here as well. April, Mayish, let's begin that solid conversation of what's in our best interest elementary wise moving into 24, 25. Let's do it early so our parents are aware as we go in to the summer and into next year, so we have a solid decision made as the project is unfolding. So that's elementary. If you flip to middle school, again, very similar. Again, not making any major adjustments. And the same if you look, and we can go back and forth here. So Dwayne, if you want to look, go to the middle school page, go up one more. We can pause there for a second and then we'll then move to the senior high page. They are showing same projection of staffing. Do I believe as we move forward, there is space for reduction of staffing at both at the middle school? Mr. Scoggins and I have had that conversation along with the leadership team of let's look at our enrollment in conjunction with what we are doing at the middle school in conversation with our teachers about how we structure our classes. Yes. I think if you look at the senior high, if you go 2 slides ahead there, Dwayne, I'm not sure, unless we're going to cut some major programs at the high school, how much significant reduction is in our staffing future at the high school. But again, a few positions at the elementary, a handful of positions at the secondary that still put us with good class sizes and good programs, puts us in a financial standpoint of what we're looking to project out to you of a reduction of positions. But it's not just about, 5 people left, we're not replacing. It's about targeted strategic planning that is focused on our instructional program. And I think I'm proud, again, I come back to, I feel like from an instructional side, we're having these conversations now to put you in a position that we educate you on this as we move forward. I'll say it again, transparency. One of the things, major discussion for the middle school and high school is a change of schedule. We have had that conversation with teachers, getting their input. We are still gathering information. We want to make sure we put our CTE program in position for success that need longer blocks, but we're also looking at, is there a way to structure our periods, our blocks into periods, and share some staff and do some things that put us in a solid position. We have not made any final decisions on realignment and or scheduling, but they are significant. When I show you 24, 25, 25, 26, for me to make projections that change a little bit, that do not crush, I believe, some of our programming, we all need to be aware of what we're going to put into those decisions. And we will share that. We'll stay focused now and in March on 23, 24. And we will begin to then project out 24, 25, 25, 26, which then takes care of the projections that Derek has shared with you, aligned with some reduction in staffing that I truly believe is a team effort that, meets the needs of the district. I've also been clear to teachers that have asked this. We are not in the business. I am not in the business, and I don't think any of you are, that we believe furloughing is an option. That comes up immediately. Oh my goodness, you're going to cut positions. No, I don't believe in it. I don't lead that way. It is a culture killer. If we were in dire straits, that's a whole different conversation. But I give credit to Derek. I give credit to this team for the years of work they've done. We're just now tweaking things that put us in position based off of our enrollment and the programs we want here. So that's why you're seeing the projections not changing much. There are a couple things that are embedded that I want to walk you back to. We had a resignation by one of our reading specialists. It is our intention at the elementary going into next year to relook at our needs assessment through the grant funding, conversation between the leadership and Mr. Stetler was there. I know he's not here tonight, he's sick, but Dr. Kirkpatrick, Mr. Slater, Mr. Decker, Mr. Stetler, and myself, one of the things we are considering is adapt. Well, we are. Our intention is to move that position as this person resigns into a Spanish special. We know we have a bilingual community. We have students. There's a lot of research that talks about language and what it allows for kids to garner and what their language is. In learning English, I know that was always the question when I was a primary principal and we had Spanish. What about kindergarten kids? There is a lot of research that shows that. I think it's also a creative special. Kids love it. They like learning that. They feel excited about learning different languages. So we're looking to doing that. We're looking to maximize our reading still, but also look at an opportunity through grant funding, shifting the grant money a little bit to do something unique I think we started the year having conversations about specials at the elementary. When I say specials, art, music, PE, those kind of things. What can we do differently that would engage kids? So that's a conversation we're having. It's not an addition of anything. It's not a cost addition. It's just a restructuring that we feel is good programmatically. The other thing that I'll take you to, I'm going to flip forward to the district-wide. Dwayne, if you go there. That's a big number when you look at 23, 24, and it still says 101 employees. Why it does that? There is no doubt that the special ed programs we have, for them to be successful, we need paraprofessionals. Go back to what Ashley just said and what Jeff will tell you about needing custodians. Misty will tell you the same thing. We need paras. It's not that we don't want it, and it's not, I commend this board, and I think that's another important community thing. You've done a lot to incentivize, but you see that additional position there because of our programs, and we want to make sure, fortunately, we can't even fully staff. We're down how many right now, Mrs. Harris? 2? There we go. So that's a positive. But the reduction there is currently we're probably looking at, we moved one of our coaches over back to the classroom. We do not intend to replace that as we go into next year. There's some things that need to be done there. So really, from a professional side, that is a staff reduction at this point. So we kind of started with one there with that intention of going to next year. So while there's not giant changes in staffing, that is one when you look at the professional side, the teaching side of things. So just to recap, not a lot of changes going into next year when you look at our enrollment, our staffing. I am going to come to you, unless, we can have that conversation as we go forward in April, May-ish. I think part of our conversations there as we approve the 23-24 budget is let's start talking about the future of our secondary and elementary plans and how that impacts our ability to staff and what that means. So that's my as quick as I can overview on staffing. Anybody from the leadership team, anything I missed that you think is important at this point? Okay. Questions from the board on that? I will say this. Should we have resignations this summer and we look ahead to what we were considering for 2 years from now? So in other words, somebody resigns that we're thinking in a year, we wouldn't replace that if they resigned a year later. That is an absolute conversation we will have of can we make it? Instead of hiring someone and then the what ifs. However, I've looked, Mrs. Ettinger has a document that has the history of Milton over the past decade and how many people either retire and or leave for a different position. There's always people coming and going. So it's not, I don't sit there and panic going, people aren't going to leave. Or people aren't going to retire. There's not going to be some level of shift. So I feel confident that we can make decisions that are, in the present, but also futuristic. So, and again, Ashley's numbers are there. We'll take any applications for people that want to come work. Questions? Thank you.
Okay, moving along, transition over to Mr. Fink with 2 different discussions, if you would, please.
All right. Boy, 8:13, time flies when you're in the finance committee. Let's sadly, I will have to wrap it up, but we will have to call it here soon. So Dwayne has up there the proposed fund balance assignments. Each year, this is a little late this year, but each year we have to look at the money that we have in our fund balance at the end of the previous fiscal year. Typically try to wrap that up in December. January is when we normally do this, but we'll do it next week. It's the assignment of funds. We have committed funds, which can't be moved without board action, and they're committed to we currently have future capital projects, technology maintenance. So it'll be reserved specifically for those costs. Assigned funds are, yes, we have them there right now, but should something come up, we can move those around to pay for what we need. And then unassigned is basically what our savings account is. We can use that for any need the district may have to cover any costs. What I proposed up there kind of follows in line with what we typically do as a district. Dwayne, if you could scroll down, I want to highlight the unassigned funds. Unassigned funds would be 2.6 million. The reason that it's a little higher than what I would typically put there, but right now the deficit we're proposing is like 2.4. Now we'll bring that down as we work through the budget. But I would never want to have less unassigned funds than what we're proposing for our deficit, because that's what's going to be used to fill that gap. So again, that's my recommendations based on what we typically do now, and also from the board. I know last month the board talked about increasing CTE programs assignment. So I increased that by I think about 300,000 to assign to CTE. But if there's any discussion on that or anything that the board would like to see differently, let me know. But that'll be on the agenda for next week to vote on. Any questions on assignment of funds? Okay. And then the last thing that I have is just a bonds update. There's no paperwork for that. One, because it's a confidential document, but two, it hasn't been finalized. The final documents will come later tonight or tomorrow morning. But last week I met with Standard & Poor's to do our interview. So each time we do that, each time we take out bonds, we have to do a credit, we have to get a credit rating from S&P. There's about an hour or two interview that I hold with S&P, and then we have a follow-up meeting with PFM, our independent financial advisors, to give them all the information they need to give us an appropriate rating. Our rating is going to come back this time as an A+ stable, which is what we had before. So what we seek is what we're looking for. It's going to make us look good to investors that want to invest in those bonds. So it'll help us get lower rates as we get those bids in. So that's good news. One thing I do want to touch on that they got back to us with, and I think it's very important, and it ties into our 7-year budget projection, is they do give us an outlook. So basically they say, here's what we're giving you today, but if you come back to us, here's what we're going to look at, and this could result in a lower rating or potentially a higher rating. So their downside scenario. So what could happen to give us less than an A+ rating when we come back? And they said we would consider a negative rating action if the district's debt burden grows or if reserves fall below levels we consider strong. We could also lower the rating if a structural imbalance leads to a consistent draw on reserves with no plans to remedy. Short version of that, if we don't have a 7-year projection to show how we're not going to go bankrupt and how we are going to remedy our deficit, they could come and give us a negative rating the next time we go to them. So our goal is to ensure that we are not going to just sit back and do nothing and drain our fund balance. And that's what we've talked about in previous months. We do have an upside scenario, and so they could consider a positive rating action if the district's economic metrics strengthen, coupled with significant moderation in its debt burden, while it sustains balanced operating performance. Layman's terms, our economy grows, new businesses show up, we show moderation in debt burden, so we pay down our debt, we don't take out more debt, and we start to balance our budget. So instead of having deficits pass, we're now passing a balanced budget each time we go without having to rely on fund balance. So that's the update from the ratings. Now that we have the ratings, the goal is going to be to go out to sale as soon as possible. So we're looking to go out to sale at the end of February for I think it's 9.995 million. Keep it under the 10 million so we can get better rates, we can get bank investments in there. But the reason we want to go out as soon as possible is because we're concerned about the rate environment. We want to get it now. And then once we have the money, we do earn a return on it. So when the money is in our account and we're waiting to use that, we do get the benefit of earning a return on our investment that goes right back into the account and then can be used for the construction project. But that's everything that I have on fund balance and bond update. Any questions from the board on that? So I'll come back in March and give everyone an update on how the sale went, how everything looks. But I'm very confident that it's going to go well for us. It typically does, and I'm happy with our A+ rating.
Thank you, sir. Then finally, under finance, we have the regular agenda items for next week. And the only one that I want to call out is the vote to approve the preliminary budget. I just kind of want to remind the board that this is just a procedural vote that's required by law. You're not approving any item under the budget. You're not approving tax increases or anything at that point. It's just we're accepting the preliminary budget and then we can adjust it from there, working toward the final budget. So just wanted to remind the board on that, as well as the public, that this is just a procedural vote. Any questions there on any of the other agenda items? Nothing further under finance, Mrs. Rance.
Thank you. Under executive committee, we're going to look at the school calendar and have a bit of a discussion on that.
So first and foremost, I think the question that's been asked is, what does next week look like? Well, thank goodness the weather is cooperating this week. We'll be putting an announcement out tomorrow, or at some point tomorrow, first thing Thursday, so it's out before the weekend. There is school on Tuesday. That is the snow makeup day. There is no school on Monday. I don't think weather's going to change that. What has then happened is people have said to me, what happens with the threat assessment or the threat day that we had? We have made an initial attempt to talk to the state about what that looks like. They have responded with, we will probably have to make it up. I'm not quite done yet, making sure. I want to do that before. I also, being honest with all of you, I think, timing of the year and that, it's not going to hurt anybody to have a long weekend this upcoming weekend. And plus not having a solid answer from the state, I don't want to make that decision haphazardly. So I anticipate coming back in March with either this is what they said, or we have to come up with a plan. It also gives us a few more weeks of winter to see where we're really at with other snow makeup days. So that's the current answer to that question if you're being asked that. And again, we're going to send a message out. We're also, and part of that message is going to be, we added a community feedback side to the webpage at the top. It says community feedback. We're putting things in there that are surveys. We're trying to get feedback on the opening of the wellness center, like we talked about as a board, getting input from the community. We have on there, if people still want to join the comprehensive planning committee, and we have the 23-24 calendar. When that page went live, I got about 5 or 6 emails. Again, it's not a lot of people, but I've got some great feedback from parents on thank you for at least letting us see it and giving our opinion. My question to the board at this point is, we want to approve this next week. I like, again, the ability for everybody to have a say. Any thoughts, questions you have heard that we want to look at?
The only thing that jumped out to me is next February, that week where we got the 2 makeup days and a half day. all in
Thank you.
one week.
So thank you. Half days. Why half days? Let me, because that was a lot of the emails from parents. We originally had Act 80 days. Act 80 days count as a school day. We have 2 Act 80 days. Kids supposed to come 180 days. They only come 178 days. So they lose instruction. However, you're qualifying that with the importance of additional time for teachers to have parent conferences to do professional development. We are choosing to eliminate Act 80 days at this point and go with early dismissal days. Why? We still get kids in for most of the day. We can then target a couple hours in the afternoons with our staff. I'm not saying it's a perfect answer. It's a balance of still getting some academics, but still using some of our teacher time to do that. Yeah, yes, what we were trying to do is keep some level of a consistency there. But you're right. There's that. I think there was one that was brought to my attention in March as well. It's a Friday and then another Friday we're off. But we were trying to look at like the 4th Friday as much as we can so parents could plan accordingly. That's an easy thing from an educator standpoint.
I'd also add that they get to eat. We get to feed the kids on those days where they would not have come in for 2 meals previously.
Good point.
And I assume if it's something that doesn't work, we can always reevaluate.
Is that?
I said, if it's something that doesn't work, we can always reevaluate it.
And that's, so a perfect example of that, Mr. Harris, and Mr. Slusser, and I have talked about this, is we are looking at that week of November off, and I've had a lot of feedback on that. Good. I think that's not, a family can plan a 9-day vacation, whereas I know we could say we could get the same amount of school days if we did through like the Tuesday of the next week for hunting. But, I think it's worth a try, but if it doesn't work, we can always come back to it.
I'll just speak up on this, on the half day in February. To me, it makes sense to move to the 16th. Start the long weekend off with a half day.
Okay.
Simple 1-week adjustment there. It might line things up better and make for the 3 days of that week better for instruction. And I'll just speak in favor of that week in November again. I mean, I've hunted my entire life, and with the way the game commission hunting season scheduled now, it only makes sense to take that whole week off, give families the opportunity. And I'll say it again, if a student wants an opportunity to hunt, I'm sure we will accommodate that opportunity throughout the season. And having kids in school Monday, Tuesday that week, Wednesday, that was just, kind of seemed like wasted days to me. So it's just, I like this calendar.
I like it.
So what it will do, we'll keep it up. We'll get, additional feedback. If I think there's anything giant that comes out to me before you vote next week, I'll share that. But at this point, I will probably make that adjustment to the 16th. I like that flow. For parents, if they want to go away and have a long weekend, they can. So. All right. Thank you.
Other than that, if you look at your agenda for executive report, if there's any items on there that you have a question on, any discussion, we talked about the school calendar, CSIU general operating budget. The information on that. Yeah, the IU approval of the operating budget. I don't think so. See anything.
So Mrs. Rand's asking about the IU budget. So it's my understanding the IU budget basically it's handed to us. I know we have a copy of that. If it's not in your packet, I'll make sure it's there next week.
Yeah, we can, well, it definitely will be there next week for sure, but we can see about getting you guys a copy ahead of time.
I'm sorry, I thought it was in your packet.
Sorry. Any other questions on proposed agenda items? All right. Move on to facilities, let's see, Mr. Harris. You prepared? Sorry. Mr. Hosterman and Mrs. Kessler.
Oh my
They are not able to be here this evening, so it defaults to you if you're prepared.
I hope so.
I can help you out because each one's going to come to me.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
So 3A, looking at 3A, Bach Elementary discussion. Our initial intention was to have Damien here with us tonight. Two reasons. Number one, we knew we had a lot of presentations anyway. Number two, well, Jeff, I'm not going to steal your thunder. Go ahead. You can give the good news.
Turn it over to me.
I'll turn it over to you.
So,
Give the update.
where are we at? Okay, so one good thing came out today. I got the building permit in my hand. So that's a step in the right direction.
That's a huge thing.
Huge step. So I know your next question is, when are they going to start building stuff? Next week. Okay, so what happened this week is they already start breaking ground for the laydown area right in front of Dave's school, held up traffic. No, not really, but it did. But anyways, they got that started today. They're putting up a telephone pole for electric. They're going to move a trailer in, so on and so forth there. Carpenters are scheduled to come in next week, start snapping lines on the floor, laying out for walls. And I think it's also scheduled, I'm looking here, to begin the metal studs for the walls inside of APOD. So that is all moving on. We've gotten a lot of contracts awarded. We did quite a few in-house with us. In the last couple of weeks, the furniture is ordered, casework's ordered. The security items as far as cameras and fobs and so on are ordered. One big thing that we are currently working on is the flooring. I left a couple samples here if you want to see it. We should have those final numbers next week for the board meeting. So therefore, we'll be able to move ahead with that. The long lead item things are being ordered now. So it was a snail's pace. Now we're up to a little slow gallop. We're actually moving forward. Right off the top of my head, you guys have any questions? I mean, a lot of things have been going on. It just kind of like flows together for me anymore.
And our intention is Damien will be here next week. We'll give
Yeah,
a more
Damien's
thorough
definitely,
update,
yeah.
look at numbers, go back over where we're at. So Again, there's the flooring, that's the epoxy.
Main hallway. Yep. The main pod and then classrooms and down in the walkways in the pods. It's the main quarter of the school.
Grays, whites, blacks, orange.
Yes. Anybody else want to see this closer?
You see it?
Did you see it, Steph?
Yep. You see it?
That's the walls.
On the walls.
It's gonna be on the walls.
Well, yeah, the white, we didn't bring those wood blocks, did you?
Walls are white, but they have an accent walls.
So Jeff has, Sherwin-Williams has Milton orange, Milton black, and is it Milton white? Really Milton white?
Yes.
Jeff, is that what it is? For the paint, it's a Milton white?
Orange and black, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's the colors.
It's a Sherwin-Williams. So I'm reading through my notes here. Damian had something written to me that he will have by next school board meeting, the numbers for the Giza and actual numbers for Derek and you folks next week. So that, everything else is pretty much covered.
Great.
Any questions? Thank you.
Well done.
Still a lot to
Well
be
done.
ironed out, I'm sure. but-
Yeah, there's still a lot. Go to 3B.
Not done yet. 3B.
3B, I think what we want to talk about there is, I know it is my understanding this board, that those of you that have been here, you know, Sundays has been a family day. It has been focused on that. We recently were discussing the fact, I think we are going to host the women's wrestling on a Sunday. A lot of any Sunday things are to start afternoon, but this is going to be an early morning start. Mr. Harris and I met. We went back to policy just to make sure, and I think you can explain guidelines, right, at state. However, I do believe it is important for the board to be aware that on a Sunday we're doing this, because it's not one of those we just commonly are going to go do this. I think it needs to make sure there's any questions or thoughts or concerns. I mean, between Mr. Harris and Mr. Moser, I think it's a very unique event that we're hosting.
So previously, the state was split into 3 regions for high school girls wrestling. With the large increase in girls wrestling, last minute, middle of the season, I decided to switch to 4 regions. And we were contacted to see if we would be willing to host the regionals for District 2, 4, and 6 at Milton. Now, boys regionals is Friday and Saturday. So they put the girls on Sunday just for availability of referees and tournament staff. Moving forward, as this grows, it may be an event that does roll to Saturday, but Mr. Harris, I talked to Mr. Harris and we were able to grab this event because I feel once you're in and you have it as the host school, it's something we want to keep. It's a positive for the community and a good revenue stream for the wrestling program.
So let me add my 2 cents.
Okay.
I'm so glad there's some past board members here that sat at this table and we grinded out a lot of hard conversations about Sunday sports.
Mhm.
We recognize that families want a day that they're not committed to something. So we agreed as a board to, if you have something on Sunday, it wouldn't happen until 1 o'clock.
Mhm.
It gave families a chance to have church. It gave families a chance to have meals. I myself personally said no to a lot of coaches over these past years. And I really struggle with agreeing to this
So
because of that. So
I
just-
totally agree. This isn't something that is just local. This event will happen either in our gymnasium or somewhere on Sunday, because with the time constraints given, that's where girls are pushed to. And I don't like the fact that the girls take second fiddle and have to take the day of the week that nobody really wants. And as they continue to build and grow, I fully see it becoming a Saturday event. But unfortunately, it's what we have to play with at this point. And the best we can do as a community to provide for the upper central part of the state, I feel it's a good thing. If we can make, a simple concession one day of the year. It's not just for a Milton coach or a Milton sports team or a Milton event. It is for Pennsylvania.
Any other thoughts? No.
Joel, you ready to move on to cleaning
Yeah.
services? Okay.
Who's talking on cleaning services?
I'll
Hoffman,
I'll
Mr.
take it and then I'll
Fink.
pass it to Jeff if needed. So I don't have to tell anyone here that we've had a hard time hiring custodians. We've also had a hard time keeping custodians that we do hire. Unfortunately, the talent pool is a bit lacking right now. We're getting to a point though, with the addition at the high school, with the 668 Mahoning, we've added square footage, but we're losing staff members and it's getting really difficult to keep up. And that's not even including like events and everything else that we have with our stadium and bringing in these additional athletic events. So with that said, we looked at outside cleaning services. Jeff and I interviewed a couple of them. We just wanted to get a feel for what the cost would look like and what their contracts might look like. And what we've discovered is that you negotiate with them, you can get a pretty fair deal. So we have found a cleaning service out of Bloomsburg that would be able to provide us with 2 full-time custodial workers. The agreement, though, could be canceled at any time by us. We would not close any positions. Our goal is to have a fully staffed, full-time employment with our own local people. But right now, it's not happening. We've increased wages, we've offered incentives, we have referral programs. So we wanted to find a way to keep our buildings clean while still being cost effective, while still having an easy out for us when we do fill those positions. So that's where we are right now. We have it available that we can get those 2 additional people. That company is fully aware of our intention to cut ties if we get fully staffed. But in the meantime, it keeps our schools clean. And I'm also excited to say that it's actually within our budget. So those 2 full-time outside cleaners falls within the amount we've budgeted for 2 full-time custodians at the district. So in fact, it's actually a little less. But that's what we're looking at. It's been what, 3 years? I think since Jeff arrived and since I've started, we've never been fully staffed. And it's just getting tougher and tougher.
I just wonder how this agency can find work and we can't. Like,
I think we asked the same questions. We're like, I personally don't understand it. I think that for the position, we offer great wages and our benefits, without a doubt, do not compare to what these other places offer. Like our
Right.
benefits are so much better.
and if it's within our budget, that means, they're taking a cut, what these people are making, and we'd be
Correct.
handing it all to the employee.
That's why, like Ashley said, friends, family,
Right.
anyone you know, like.
And that's where we're at. Like,
These are great positions. And our goal is never going to change. We want our own employees and we will keep those positions open. We will continue to interview and hire. And really the goal is we don't even have to be fully staffed. We just need to be fuller staffed and then we will cut back on outside services. But yeah, we want to make sure our custodian team that's here now know we do not want to replace them. In fact, the last thing I want to do is for them to leave. We want our people.
so let's talk about that. And it's on Carol's schedule today. So it is on my calendar. We are meeting with every custodial staff at each of the buildings to go over this with them because we do not want them thinking this is about contracting out. We have tried the incentive pieces. We have done all that. The only thing I know that I think we can do right now is that these people, they have people, we can at least take some of the burden off them. And if it gets people's attention and they go, you know what, I'm going to go ask somebody and we hire them, great. But we're going to sit with them and go over what our purpose is, our own people. We're doing this as a Band-Aid right now to allow us to do things.
Yeah, and I want to add too that part of this as well is we want to give our people the preferred shifts. So we will be looking to move our own staff to the best available shifts for them. And then the people we bring in would be working second shift, things like that. So we also, overtime will still be available for our custodians. That won't go away. So if that's something they rely on, depend on, still there. Like it's really just, to me, it's a stopgap measure to make sure our facilities are where they need to be. And it's, like I said, it's 2 to 3 years in the making, unfortunately. So makes sense. Any other questions on that?
I just have a question about the wrestling. Who cleans on Sunday?
So with the wrestling, we'll talk about that. She asked about who cleans on Sunday.
Who cleans up on Sunday after?
Yeah.
So how that works is, our school, the rest of Pennsylvania USA Wrestling provides the funding for the referees, collects the admissions, collects the entry fee for the wrestlers, but we get the admissions at the door for the fans that come in and watch, and we also get concession money. So the door take will be enough to cover the gym fees and for the custodians.
And all the other events.
And all the other event staff, yes. Because it's looking at like 250 wrestlers. They bring 3 fans each. You know, it's a significant amount of money coming in the door.
And we'll have staff that volunteer to do this on a Sunday. I mean, I don't, we have staff that likes to work on Sunday.
Rod, you're good with staffing for that, for the
I
wrestling?
will use all my event staff. We will pay our event staff out of the gate money that comes through the door.
You feel like you have people that will do it?
Yep.
Good question. So Mrs. Ranch just asked, that is not on your next week's agenda, the cleaning service. Why? Because when we went to press with this, we just, what was it, late last week, we got the final go from the company. So it will be added to the agenda next week. We just didn't have solid numbers. We were still in discussion up until last week.
Yes, right. Because we had 2 cleaning services that we were looking between, and then we found one that could commit 2 employees to us at the start of March and also at a better cost. So
we'll add that as an agenda item.
I think we've discussed all the proposed agenda items. You'll also add the approval for the
We'll add the approval.
facility issues.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Personnel Committee, Mr. Frederick.
We just have the normal agenda items. Anybody has any questions on those? Nothing out of the ordinary on those. Any questions? Nothing further under personnel.
Okay. Legislative and Policy Committee, Dr. Strasser.
So there's just the regular agenda items, 12A and 12B, including open records report and a recommended approval of the final reading of a few policies. Any questions on that? Nothing further.
That everything? Athletics and Extracurricular Committee, Mr. Moser.
Yes, it's just the proposed agenda items. List of coaches and then the volunteers and the Sunday event.
Yeah, that's true.
Anybody have any questions? I have one myself. This is for Rod. I see Trent Donlin on here. He's our full-time strength and conditioning coach. And who is going to fill his slot, or how are we going to cover that if he does become a track coach? Because under my understanding that he covers the weight room from a set period to a set period of time.
Yep,
And I
so
don't
we've already
understand this.
discussed that and looked at different hours for Trent to be able to work. And we're also structuring the throwing practices around his work schedule. We've met with him and discussed with him, when are the students pretty much wrapping up in the weight room? When are they getting done? It's normally about 5 o'clock or 5:30 is when that's really winding down. So we're creating a schedule for him to be able to, basically, we can utilize him to the best of what he's able to do for us. He is a unique person. If you had a chance to meet him yet, he is really good with the kids. The kids love him. That weight room is pretty much packed every day after school. So we're just trying to utilize him to the best of all of our abilities here.
Now, moving forward, when we, allow public to come into the weight room, who will then fill his spot?
Yep, so we have a schedule for that also. Basically, it would be twofold, where we would structure his start time earlier in the day, move that a little later. He would still be here for the students throughout blocks 3 and 4 after school. Then he would have a structured break time for when the throwing practice would be. And then he'd be right back in for the community if and when we open it up for the community.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? That's it this evening.
Okay, and finally, education and technology, Mr. Frederick.
Yes, we have a presentation on the entrepreneurship curriculum.
Yes, I think it's more of, I know last month when I presented about the program and kind of the proposal about dropping our accounting program and rebranding and creating this entrepreneurship program. I know several board members wanted to see a little bit more detail in regards to what the curriculum may look like, as well as a little more in-depth interview or overview. Mrs. Ettinger sent you guys 2 documents, I believe earlier this month, which did show an overview of the task grid, which is in the CTE world, similar to what curriculum looks like, as well as a PowerPoint presentation with several slides that goes a little more in depth on what the program looks like. So if you had a chance to review that, I really just wanted to use this time to see if I could answer any other questions that may have come up after taking a look at that in regards to the proposal of moving forward next week with altering and curtailing the draft or the accounting program at the end of the 22-23 school year, and then moving to create the entrepreneurship program at the start of the 23-24 school year.
Did everyone have time to review those documents? No, Josh, you had asked about the syllabus on it, didn't you?
Yeah, I only asked just because I was more so curious, because under previous superintendent, we really didn't get a chance to see a lot of the new stuff. At least, I mean, when I was on the board. So I just, want to try to start something new that maybe the board can see things. So that's the reason why I asked.
Yeah, the one document you did receive, which again is the task grid. And if you remember, the entrepreneurship is unique in the fact that it does not have a state approved task grid. You can create your own, and it does have to be approved by the state when you submit for the program to go through the approval process. So we received a number of different task grids that have been approved by other programs across the state. The one you're looking at is the one that my business department feels best fits kind of their strengths and what they feel the students need to get out of the program. It is color coded in the fact that anything that is highlighted, I think blue, Mrs. Emery Cyber. So those are tasks that are already in some way, shape, or form taught in current courses that we offer. And anything in green is Mr. O'Connor. Again, tasks, skills, content that's already taught in current courses that we offer. So again, it's that kind of further reiterates that idea of rebranding what we're doing and packaging it in a different way that is more appealing to our students and gives them a more holistic view of the business world. I know that there were some concerns about the accounting program kind of going away, and as a full CTE program, yes, that is the goal, to remove it as a full-time CTE program. But if you look under kind kind of section 6 of that task grid, you can see that there is a whole portion of this program that is dedicated to accounting and really does cover most of what's covered in our standalone Accounting 1 and Accounting 2 courses. So it is still a fundamental part of the program.
I did read that and I did feel more comfortable, but I felt really comfortable after I met with Mrs. Seibert and she kind of reviewed everything. And then she also gave Mrs. Blindstein's blessing. So it's all good. I just was assured that accounting is really not going away.
I did get a chance to talk to Mrs. Blystein the other morning, actually. She wanted me to reiterate too that accounting did go away for a number of years as a full-time program. However, she kept it alive in that we still did offer those 2 standalone accounting courses for many years. And we've had a lot of students go on into the accounting career field with just those courses as their foundation. So it still does provide a good foundation for a student that does want to go into accounting specifically. Again, I kind of like the analogy of our construction trades program. A student may go into that program really looking to, get into the plumbing field, but they're still going to be exposed to masonry. They're still going to be exposed to electrical, and they may still finish the program with wanting to stay down the path of plumbing, but they're at least going to get exposed to some of those other areas in the construction fields program as a whole. So I really feel it's the best of both worlds.
Any other questions?
I guess I have one. It would be, so I see you have them identified by blue and green on who the instructor is, but what about the ones that aren't highlighted? Are they already implemented programs or?
I can't hear you, Mr. Harris. I'm sorry. Acoustics are weird in here.
So you have them broken down here by who's instructing them based on green and blue for whether it's Mr. O'Connor or Mr. Seibert. But what about the ones that are highlighted? Are they already implemented programs or?
No, they're not. So those are the ones that are not highlighted are ones that we would have to then incorporate into the program. So that's those 2 indicating these are areas that we already teach in current courses. But when we move towards creating the entrepreneurship program, we would look to include some of those other tasks in the program itself.
That's it.
Okay. And finally, we have just the agenda for next week under this area, and it is just one item, which are the field trip requests. Any questions there? Nothing further under education and technology.
Information tonight. Do we have any comments from board members? Any questions, anything that you want to discuss that was maybe not discussed today? I feel like we solved all the problems of the world. A lot. Frederick, anything from you?
Nope. I just want to add, I did review the contract for the KOEZ and the LERTA, and it doesn't have any language that would prohibit them from appealing their assessed value at the end of the contract.
So we can probably expect that from a good
I would
majority.
absolutely expect that.
Any comments from visitors this evening? All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
First, second, all in favor signify aye.
Aye.
See you next week. Back at the school. Come here anymore.